Night, and nobody really knows the Amazon Prime theme, do they, Max? I don't think they do.
I don't think so either.
I don't think I would recognize the Amazon Prime theme. Go ahead and find it and play it. I can't pull it in my own mind. Fox, obviously, CBS, NBC Sunday night, Monday Night Football, those are all wonderful sounds of the season, no doubt. But I don't think I really know the Amazon Prime Thursday night theme.
All right, here is that? I just pulled it up. So here's the Amazon Prime Thursday Night Football theme.
All right, let's hear it. Oh, now I know.
Yeah, it sticks once you hear it a little bit.
Yeah, it's not bad, but it's far from sort of, etched into our
iconic
brains. Yeah. A lot of people don't have Amazon Prime, but you don't need it tonight if you are in one of the two markets that are playing. The game tonight will be on, I think, Fox Channel 5 locally. Now, I do have Amazon Prime. And by the way, I honestly believe, and I've said this before, that the Amazon Prime picture for Thursday Night Football is the crispest, clearest of any of the networks doing NFL. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because it's streaming, but it is a great picture. Phenomenal. YouTube TV in general, by the way, overall, no, that's Amazon Prime, understood. But YouTube TV, too, I find that the sports, the pictures are much better than cable. I don't know. Just a thought. Game day. Good morning, everybody. On the show today, predictions, my keys to beating Green Bay tonight at Lambeau. We will have Denton on the show to talk some college football. We'll have Charch on the show to talk some fantasy. And we might get another guest or two between now and then. Thursday night football overall hasn't been kind to Washington over the years. I'm talking about Thursday nights, not necessarily Thursdays, although Thursdays on Thanksgiving haven't been that kind really to Washington overall. Last year, they lost at Philadelphia. The year before was that embarrassing loss at home to the Bears, where for some reason, no one thought we could lose that game. Yeah, they could lose that game. They had Sam Howell playing quarterback. The year before that, remember the game in which Carson Wentz got hurt, but they beat the Bears 12-7. The year before that was the Dustin Hopkins, jumping off sides by the Giants. I think it was Dexter Lawrence who jumped off sides on a missed field goal, giving Dustin Hopkins a second chance. He buried the field goal. They beat the Giants 30-29. We could go back through all of them. Those are some of the more recent Thursday night games. This is Washington's only Thursday night game on the schedule, but the first of many primetime games. They will play in primetime on Monday night, October 13th, against the Bears. They will play on Monday Night Football at Arrowhead on October 27th. They'll play on Sunday night at home against Seattle. They'll play at Sunday night at home against Denver. Washington got a lot of these high-profile spots, as we talked about when the schedule came out, and this is the first of several. I haven't even mentioned the Madrid game and some of those highlighted late afternoon 4:25 kickoffs against teams like the Lions and the Cowboys, which will come up later on in the season. Big game tonight. We talked about that on yesterday's show. I really do believe that this is a game that it doesn't matter that football this time of the year can be very misleading. The games all count the same, and there are only 17 of them. And this is one of those games that we may look back on and say it was the difference between, a division title and a 6 seed, or the difference between a 5 seed and a 7 seed, or the difference between a 2 seed and a 3 seed. So where the NFC North champ and the NFC East champ in the divisional round play their playoff game. Home field does matter in the postseason. This is, as I mentioned, the most important early season game in years, to which I had this from Justin. Justin wrote in, the Raiders game in 2017, you're such a Kirker forever. The biggest early season game was shock and awe. Just ask Tommy. Yeah, I said yesterday that this is the biggest home game early in the season. I'm sorry, game early in the season, home or away, that they've had since 2017 when they played the Raiders on Sunday Night Football. And Justin is accusing me of going to one of Kirk's really good games. Yeah, he threw for 365 and 3 touchdowns in that game, but he had a lot of those games. Let's not forget, as a Washington Redskin. But yeah, look, the pickings are slim. You know, this team was so bad for so long. It's not like they had many games on their schedule early in the season. The shock and awe game was 2012. Tom Lavero on our radio show then together famously said the week leading it up to the RG3 debut against the Saints, I am predicting shock and awe and a huge Washington season opening win. And yeah, we were shocked. We were in awe after that 40-32 win over the Saints. But that's different because that was not an anticipated game by the league other than to see RG3 in his debut. Andrew Luck was making his debut as well, and there was a lot of anticipation for that. This is a game between two teams. Right now, by the way, Green Bay has moved up to the second favorite to win the NFC Championship, just barely behind Philadelphia. Washington is right in that 3-5 range with the 49ers and the Lions, but they're all kind of bunched up odds-wise. You know, this is, you know, a game between two teams that the odds makers expect to be in the postseason, and in Green Bay's case right now, expect to contend for the NFC Championship. Big test tonight. I'll have my keys coming up shortly. I wanted to read this from Brad. Brad wrote, Kevin, here's another Cliff Kingsbury narrative that you can explore and hopefully counter. His teams don't do well on Thursday nights with a few days to prepare. The Cardinals were 1-3 with him as a head coach on Thursday nights. And last year, the Commanders lost to Philadelphia on Thursday night. So Cliff Kingsbury is 1-4 overall. Please look into this. So Brad, when he mentioned here's another Cliff Kingsbury narrative that you can explore and hopefully counter, was referring to the first Cliff Kingsbury narrative pre-2024 that Cliff's teams in college and in the NFL with Arizona would fall off a cliff late in seasons. His teams did not have nearly the records late in seasons that they had in the early portion of the seasons, and the points per game went down later in the season versus early in the season. And I went back and looked at all of those years at Texas Tech and looked at those Arizona years and, you know, pretty much debunked the Cliff narrative. The bottom line in college is that the reason they scored less and won less later in the season is because they weren't playing Stephen F. Austin, UTEP, and Sam Houston State. Those were the teams that they opened with early in the season, and they would be putting up 60, 70, and even 80 points and 600, 700, 800 yards in games against much lesser competition. And then when they got later into the season and played conference games against much better opponents, they did lose more games and they scored a little bit less, but they were losing games 50-48, 62-47. I mean, it was massive shootouts. The offenses never fell off, which was what we were interested in because he was going to be an offensive coordinator. It was the defenses and the competition. And then when he got into the NFL, injuries played a big role with some of Arizona's late season losses, and their defenses gave up too much later in the season as well. So his offenses, statistically, if you want to go points scored or even yards, gained, it fell off, but they were still very dynamic and very strong offensive football teams late in the season like they were early in the season. It was just competition was different, or the defenses were bad, or there were injuries. Well, what Brad is suggesting, first of all, what he is pointing out is true. Cliff Kingsbury, as a head coach in Arizona and now as a coordinator in the NFL, in 5 Thursday night games, the teams he's been involved with are 1-4 in those games. So Brad is suggesting this is another Cliff narrative, that he isn't good on Thursday nights. So this did not take long, Brad, to sort of go back and debunk a bit, which, if that's even a thing, you brought this to my attention. I have not heard this to be a thing, but maybe it's one of those things that I don't pay attention to on social media. But this one's really easy to look at. So the Cardinals, when he was the head coach there, they played 4 Thursday night games, and they were 1-3. And the bottom line is the 3 losses were against really good football teams. So in 2019, they played a Thursday night game against the 49ers, who came into the game undefeated, 7-0. And they lost a very tightly fought 28-25 game. I hardly think that is an indication that he's not good on Thursday nights. The 49ers were 7-0. In 2020, they went to Seattle, a house of horrors for a lot of teams over the years. And the Seahawks were good. They were 6-3 before that game, and they lost that game 28-21. Decent game, but lost. 2021, they had Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, who were 6-1 coming into Arizona for Thursday night football, and they lost 24-21, a game they could have easily won. So the 3 they lost in Arizona were to excellent teams, and yet they had chances to win the game. And then they beat the Saints in 2022 when he was the head coach of the Cardinals, 42-34 on Thursday night football. The Saints were not very good. They were 2-5 coming into the game. And then last year, let's face it, Thursday night on the road against Vic Fangio and a very good Eagles team, and they lost that game. So yes, he is 1-4 as a head coach / coordinator in the NFL on Thursday night football, but the 4 losses were to excellent teams, and the games were close, and the offenses played well in those games, with the exception of last year at Philadelphia. So, Brad, I would not put much into that Cliff narrative at all. I'm expecting a really good game tonight. Excited about this one. Not that I wasn't pumped up for the opener, because you want to see what they're going to look like this year. But this is a really interesting quick week 2 matchup. The Packers are good. It's early in the season. There's a short turnaround. There are a couple of things going on with the Packers right now that got, I think, even more exposure yesterday after their injury report came out. And that is that they are banged up along their offensive line. They've got a very good offensive line, but 2 starters did not finish the game on Sunday against Detroit, and they are questionable for tonight. Right tackle Zach Tom and left guard Aaron Banks. They paid Banks good money to come from San Francisco in the offseason, and they re-upped Zach Tom to come back. The Packers' offensive line is good, but it may not be healthy tonight. That could be a huge part of this game. If they're not healthy, offensive line. I don't know much about their backups, but would backups against this newly put together, what seems to be much better resuscitated defensive front, would it be good enough against Payne, Kinlaw, Wise, Armstrong, Jacob Martin, etc.? The O-line's not the only injury issue for Green Bay. They brought in Nate Hobbs in the offseason, paid him $48 million over 4 years from the Raiders to play corner, to start at corner. He did not play in the opener, and he is questionable again tonight. So that could be an issue. And then look, Micah Parsons played 30 snaps of the 67 on Sunday. He's had the back. He's listed as questionable tonight with the back. He did not have a summer where he worked. He's still getting acclimated to his new team. It's a short turnaround game. Is it possible that Parsons plays again on a pitch count tonight? And maybe it's, less pitches than he even got on Sunday. I would doubt that considering how well he played on Sunday, but he is listed as questionable, and it's, 4 nights later, which also brings up this point. It is a matchup between the oldest team in the league roster-wise, Washington, and the youngest team roster-wise in Green Bay. Now, we know that one of the reasons Washington's roster is the oldest on average is guys like Josh Johnson at 39 and Tress Way and special teamers like their long snapper Tyler Ott and Nick Bellore. They, bring up the average age, but it's not just players like that. Obviously, Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz and Von Miller are key players, when you're talking about guys that are older, that are significant, offensive or defensive side of the ball, not just special teams or backup quarterbacks or third string quarterback guys. Now, is that a factor? I don't know. It's 4 days. These guys don't play football in the summer. The older guys in particular don't play any football in the summer. And so now you're asking them to start the season 2 games in 4 days. Is it, an advantage for the younger team? I'm not counting on that, but it's just an interesting thing that it is the matchup between the oldest roster and the youngest roster, and it is a short week game. And then there's just this, totally irrelevant thing that a lot of, touts will give you. Washington hasn't won at Lambeau in their last 6, and the last time they won was 1988. Well, who cares? Every NFL season is its own entity. Every game is its own entity. But it is true, Washington hasn't won since 88 with Doug Williams at quarterback and Kelvin Bryant going for 140 yards on 27 carries and then catching 9 passes for 70 yards, 36 touches, 210 yards for Kelvin Bryant in that game. Man, remember the North Carolina star who had played in the USFL? Washington had signed him, Gary Clark, Ricky Sanders. They did well with USFL guys. That was the last time they won in Green Bay. They won it on a Chip Lohmiller fourth quarter field goal, 20-17. Lambeau's been very difficult on a lot of teams, but especially bad teams, and that's essentially what Washington has sent to Green Bay over the years. Bad football teams. Ironically, Washington's done pretty well against Green Bay at home, even with some of the bad teams. Remember their last meeting with Green Bay, Taylor Heineke, or their last win over Green Bay, Taylor Heineke came up big. Threw that big third down, remember, to Terry McLaurin. What a catch. And they won that game 23-21. All right. My keys to a win tonight over Green Bay. Next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We are free and live on the Odyssey app, and you can watch the show on the Team 980 YouTube page. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button when you get there.
Going into this season, a lot of people expected the Commanders to be a very good team. They also thought the Packers would be a very good team. So is this a good measuring stick in a sense early in the season?
For sure, it's going to be a heavyweight bout. You know what I mean? And I'm going to look forward to it. I look forward to the heavyweight games, the ice bag games. I look forward to it.
Ice bag games. Usually, what's the difference in those ice bag games? What does it come down to?
Mentality, physicality. That's it.
How do you help try to instill that kind of mindset right away, set the tone from a Monday going into a Thursday?
I mean, guys know what's up with me around here. So I'm a physical presence, and that's what I do. So it ain't really nothing more that I need to do, you know.
Scott Abraham from Channel 7 asking the questions to Javon Kinlaw. It's an ice bag game. Love those ice bag games, as long as they don't turn into body bag games. We had one of those at night many, many years ago, and it didn't go our way. All right, keys to a win over Green Bay tonight. The Packers -3.5, pretty much in most places. I see some threes out there, but mostly 3.5s. And the total's 48.5, pretty much the highest total on the board for the Week 2 games. Jacksonville, Cincinnati's right there at 48 as well. All right, number one, Washington beats Green Bay tonight at Lambeau if they can make the Packers one-dimensional on offense. By the way, the first several keys, like they were against the Giants on Sunday, for me, it's going to be a lot about the defense more so than the offense. Why? Because I have a lot of confidence in the offense. I do, even against good defensive teams. But there are a few things that I will mention. But these first few keys are Washington's defense against Green Bay's offense. And number one, you've got to make Green Bay one-dimensional offensively. It's hard to do because Matt LaFleur is a very good offensive head coach. He's a very good play caller. And you know what? The last time he faced off against Dan Quinn, that playoff game in Dallas in January of 2024, this was the game that basically disqualified Dan Quinn for many of you from being our team's next head coach. The Packers destroyed Dallas on that day, 48-32. They ran it all over them. They threw it all over them. Had Quinn and that defense off balance the entire game. Running the football, play action, throwing it. Love was great. Aaron Jones was great. They were dominant up front. And LaFleur has had Quinn in his matchups as a head coach in Green Bay off balance a lot. 3 times, 3 meetings between LaFleur as the head coach in Green Bay and Quinn as either the head coach in Atlanta or the defensive coordinator in Dallas. The Packers with LaFleur won all 3 of those games and on offense averaged 36 points per game and 424 yards per game. Why? Well, some of those defenses in Dallas and in Atlanta were a bit predictable. A lot of cover 1, a lot of cover 3. And LaFleur's really good. And they had, by the way, for 2 of those 3 meetings, Aaron Rodgers in MVP seasons. So that makes a difference as well. All right. But tonight, if Green Bay is able to run the football and use play action and stay out of 3rd and longs or just 3rd downs in general, Washington's offense will have to win the game. They'll have to score 28 plus to have a chance. We said this a lot last year, going into games that, unless the defense steps up, it's going to have to be Jaden and that offense that somehow scores enough to win and plays well enough to win. And, making Green Bay one-dimensional starts with stopping the run, which is something Washington did very well on Sunday against the Giants. But the Packers are not the Giants, guys. Early season or not, their offensive line injuries are going to be a big issue tonight, as I mentioned in the last segment. If those 2 guys play and they're healthy, it's a very good offensive line. If they don't play, they're questionable. I don't know what that line would be. They dominated the Lions, including Aiden Hutchinson on Sunday. But the bottom line for Washington defensively, you can't let Matt LaFleur get this defense off balance with the running game with Josh Jacobs and then with the weapons they have, because they have a lot of them. Maybe not elite weapons, but they have a lot of them. Number 2, Washington beats Green Bay if they can get pressure with 4. Miller, Luvu on the outside, Payne and Armstrong on the inside, maybe Kinlaw for Payne. We saw that on one 3rd and long, but basically their third and obvious passing on Sunday against the Giants. Payne, Armstrong inside, Luvu, Miller on the outside, plenty of movement, plenty of stunts, no 3-point stances. It was, easy against the Giants. But they've got to be able to pressure with 4 because I worry that if they have to send a +1, which they didn't have to do last week against New York very often, then Love is really capable of picking them apart. You guys, Jordan Love can throw the football. He processes quickly. He can get it out quickly. He is accurate. He can go downfield quickly. He can hit the check down quickly. He throws over the middle. He can throw outs. This guy's really good. You give him time, and you've got a defense that's on its heels because of their balance. It could be a long night defensively. It could be. I have more belief already after one game in the defense. Trust me, I do. I have more belief in the secondary compared to last year. I do. But the Packers have a ton of options. I mentioned this yesterday. Jordan Love was 16 of 22. Just 16 completions against the Lions. He didn't have to throw it more because the game was over when it got to the fourth quarter. But he threw 16 completions in the game to 10 different receivers. That's crazy. That's almost impossible to do. He completed passes to 8 different guys in the first quarter alone. I've talked about Dobbs and Wicks and Reed. Tucker Kraft, their tight end. Tough matchup. If you got to go with more than 4 to get pressure on Jordan Love, and Detroit didn't get much pressure on Jordan Love, then I fear for the coverage on the back end. And I think that Love and LaFleur have answers for pressure. And I think somebody's going to be open. And they've got speed. They've got size. They've got good route runners. Get pressure on Love when he's got to throw with 4. The O-line injuries, again, could be a factor tonight. Could be a major plus for Washington. So Washington beats Green Bay if they keep Green Bay one-dimensional, make Green Bay one-dimensional, and if they can get pressure with 4. Number 3, they beat Green Bay if they're able to play like the same amount of base defense that they played in the opener. What was great about Sunday, and we talked about this, I think, on Tuesday, is that they have more defensive linemen, better defensive linemen, and depth along the defensive front. So you'd like to see those players play a lot more and more of them be on the field. Their base defense is a 4-3, even though they have had some base defense first down looks that look more like a 3-4 or even a 5-man front. But there are a lot of defensive linemen in the game. Wise, Armstrong, Kinlaw, Payne, Jacob Martin, they're all in the football game. And they've got Kinlaw and Payne playing. They're playing them in different spots too. We went through, all of the different places that Armstrong played and Payne played the other day. They've got versatility. They're certainly confident in their versatility. So it'd be nice to see Green Bay say, hey, we're going to try to run the football in 12 personnel, and, in 12 personnel, you can be in base more. You can be in your base 4-3. Last year, remember, they played a lot of nickel. It's one of the reasons they were not a good run-stopping team. You're typically not nearly as good stopping the run with 5 DBs on the field versus 4 defensive linemen and 4 DBs on the field. I want the bulk on the field tonight. I want to see the size up front. I want to see, less nickel, more base like we did last week, but didn't last year. I'd love to see some of these 5-man fronts. I'd love to see the penetration. But I don't know that you get that. You get that against the run if you're in nickel too much. So one of those things to watch, does Green Bay play a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 2 tight ends? Is Washington able to play their base defense a lot more than they did last year, and more like what they did last week because it worked last week. They were excellent last week. Again, the Giants, that quarterback was terrible. Tonight, the Packers and that quarterback much better. But if they can often be in something resembling base for them a lot more than they were last year, I think that's it. I think that's to Washington's advantage this year because they've got better D linemen and more of them. Number 4, Washington beats Green Bay if they don't give up the big play. Green Bay may not have an elite wide receiver, okay, but they've got so many of them. By the way, the tight end's a big threat. The running back is a threat. But, Savion Williams, their third rounder, Matthew Golden, their first rounder. Matthew Golden runs a 4.2. Wicks and Dobbs and Reed is crafty and has great speed and great quickness. You can't give up the big play here, especially the big play for a score, because I think the red zone, and I'll get to that, will have a big part in tonight's outcome. But giving up the big play, especially if you end up having to send 5 to get pressure on 3rd and 4 or on 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9. I don't know. I love what I saw in the first week, but I also was very impressed with what Green Bay is capable of doing. Again, I've mentioned everything defensively. Offensively, just a couple of keys real quickly. Number 1 is Green Bay. Let me just mention their defense is really talented too, especially with the addition of Parsons. But I mentioned Lucas Van Ness yesterday. He's a load. He's the guy, remember, if I didn't mention this yesterday, in the 2023 draft, that I think Washington wanted to trade up and select. Remember, they were on there was that video with Martin Mayhew talking to New England about maybe moving up, and then Pittsburgh ended up pulling the trigger and trading up. But Washington closed off that conversation once Van Ness got picked right before New England was going to pick. And then New England dealt with Pittsburgh, let Pittsburgh come up to take the lineman. And they moved back behind Washington because obviously they thought Washington was going to take Emmanuel Forbes and they thought they could get Christian Gonzalez there. But Lucas Van Ness is a player. And Rashawn Gary can play. And now they've got Parsons. They got this guy Cooper who is nasty. Number 56, all right, as a linebacker. So they've got a good defense. With that said, there isn't any defense that I think our offense can't move the football on and score. They proved that against Philadelphia's vaunted defense December of last year. Turned it over 5 times, still scored 36 points. Hell, they proved it in the NFC Championship game against the best defense in football. They moved the ball up and down the field. They just turned it over 4 times. I'm not saying some of those turnovers weren't forced and that they weren't, one of them was on special teams, but they still moved the football a hell of a lot more than Kansas City did in the Super Bowl. I don't fear any really good defensive team with number 5 on the field and with what we think is an improved offensive line, what we think is an added major weapon in Debo, year 2. I just think, when you have an offense, right, that, can stretch the field vertically, horizontally, the way Cliff does, can, even more so now with Debo Samuel, has a quarterback who is involved in the run game, has a ton of backfield motions. I mean, some of the stuff we watched. And by the way, has to dictate to the defense, oh, by the way, you've got to take one of your 11 and use that guy as a spy on the quarterback. Remember, it was the Atlanta game, I think the Atlanta game, where they had 2 spies. Raheem Morris used 2 spies on Jaden. So I just feel like offensively, we're always capable of going down the field against anybody, even a good defense, and scoring. But a couple of things. One, you got to know where Micah Parsons is when he's on the field. And you can't let what happened last week. I mean, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, they got a couple of quick, easy rushes against Tunsil and Connerly Jr. You don't want that. Even though Jaden's capable of making, a quick and effective pass rush, look silly ultimately with his playmaking ability. You don't want that. You'd like him to be able to drop back and throw from a clean pocket. The other thing, too, is I was thinking about this more and more this week. And Joe didn't seem to think, Joe Theismann yesterday, that what I thought. I thought Jaden took too many hits on Sunday. And I thought some of them were unnecessary. He had that read option keeper, which actually probably was the wrong decision early in the game, and he got tackled awkwardly. He could have gotten to the sideline, and instead of getting 5 yards on first down, gotten 4, without the contact. The quarterback counter, he could have gotten down. The quarterback draws, he could have gotten down. I'd like to see him in this game because they've got some headhunters out there, and they've got some speed. I'd like to see him protect himself. This is a long haul. And Jeff Hafley, we had the Green Bay guy on yesterday. He thinks that this year is going to be much more of an aggressive year from Green Bay's defense. I would actually be surprised if they spend a lot of time and a lot of players coming after Jaden. I think the way to play Washington defensively is bend, don't break, and then try to, get the stops in the red zone. That leads me to this. Red zone will be crucial tonight. Washington wins if they come out on the plus side of the red zone equation, meaning, you got to be 3 of 4, 3 of 5 in the red zone tonight. And you got to hold them to 1 of 3 or 2 of 5 because the team that kicks more field goals in this game loses in the red zone, because I believe we're going to see both teams have success moving the football. I think the biggest surprise to me, although Thursday night games are wild cards, you never know, but it would be a 13-10 low-scoring game with, 12 punts, 13 punts, 14 punts. That would surprise me. I think both teams have the potential to move the football tonight. And then here are a couple of other things. Obviously, you got to play a cleaner game than you did Sunday. Fewer penalties, no drop passes, better timeout usage. All the things that I said would have led to, a problematic situation against a better team, but didn't hurt them against the Giants. Turnovers are always big in games like this. And, the kickers, it could come down to the kickers. Brandon McManus is 23 of 24 as a Packers kicker, including 2 for 2 last week against Detroit. And Matt Gay, we saw in the preseason, there are reasons to wonder. He has not attempted a field goal yet. He might have to tonight. Really good matchup, though. I'll have my prediction a little bit later on in the show with Max having his as well. But if the Thursday night quick turnaround, health, injuries don't play a major factor in this game, this should be a really fun and good football game between two, I think, really good teams. Denton will join us next. We'll preview what is a much better college football weekend coming up. We'll do that next. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, happy Thursday, everybody. The Commanders play a football game today, but we're not going to start off there. We're going to start off in the NHL. Kirill Kaprizov, one of the NHL's best young talents, has turned down a contract extension with the Minnesota Wild that would have been an 8-year deal worth $128 million or $16 a year. That would make him the highest paid player in NHL history. Now, Wild GM Bill Guerin says he doesn't want all-out panic from the fans, but Kaprizov can become a free agent at the end of this season, and the list of suitors would certainly be a long one. The Nats, they fall to the Marlins by a score of 8-3. An okay night for Jake Irvin as he goes 5 innings, giving up a few runs in the 6th, and it all snowballed from there for the Nats as they gave up all 8 runs in the later innings, the 7th, 8th, and 9th. They will reset for one final matchup versus the Marlins this series. Mackenzie Gore on the bump versus Ryan Weathers. First pitch at 6:40. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:10. And tonight, the Washington Commanders, as I said before, they play a football game today. They will take on the Green Bay Packers live from Lambeau Field on Amazon Prime. The injury report for Washington, Tress Way is questionable with a back injury. Mitch Wisnowski backing him up if he can't go. And Dietrich Wise, a limited participant in practice yesterday, he is questionable as well. Kickoff set for 8:15 on Amazon Prime. Pregame starts right here on the Team 980 at 6:30 with Denton Day and Linnell Willingham. You can also watch for free on twitch.tv/NFL. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, Type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Den's office throughout all of football season and Burgundy and Gold halftime show from Honor Brewing tonight. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Pick up your book bags. Grab your notebooks. It's time to go on campus with Denton.
Give me my theme music.
Yeah, every week on Thursdays in this spot, we're going to talk to our guy, D-Day, Denton Day, my producer for several years, now with his own gig at Sirius XM, of course, doing the college football overtime show, but also part of the BetMGM Network's programming and part of our programming, too, on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan at the Denton Day. Last week, was not the best weeks of college football. I mean, we had the game Saturday night. I'll just mention one thing, and I want your reaction. Bryce Underwood, the incredibly highly touted quarterback, 5-star plus 5-star, that committed to LSU, that ended up going to Michigan with all the money that Michigan got together. He is not ready for prime time yet. He looks young. He looks inexperienced. He looks jittery and not really ready to play the position, not against that level of competition. What did you see?
Yeah, it's all freshmen. I saw a freshman that had a halfway decent week number 1, and then it went up against a defensive mastermind in Brent Venables and was lost. And scared is probably not the right word, but he didn't look like he was in control. And when he wasn't in control, he kind of started to get all over the place, if you will. And I thought the Oklahoma defense did a really good job with that, and it was very clear they could not score by throwing the football for the second year in a row with Bryce Underwood. He'll get better. Like, that's the one thing. Like, he has a much higher ceiling than the other dudes that they had at quarterback last year for Michigan, but it was a tough outing last weekend for sure.
What did you think? This was the first time for me watching John Mateer, the Oklahoma quarterback. He was at Washington State the last couple of years. What did you think of him?
I think he's good. I think he gives Oklahoma something that they did not have last year. Defensively with Venables, since he took over, they've always been really, really good. They just struggled immensely at quarterback. And I thought going up against Wink Martindale's defense, and, Michigan has a bunch of guys that are also going to be playing on Sundays. I thought he handled himself really well. Was he the greatest quarterback I've ever seen? No. But I thought he was really, really good doing what he needed to do and, making sure that they came away with a win.
I thought he was really good. I was not anticipating that. I didn't know a lot about him. I mean, read a little bit about him, but I thought he was a total gamer. He's definitely a true dual threat guy. He's really crafty as a runner. He's got great feel. I looked up his height during the game, and he's listed as 6'1". He doesn't play 6'1". He plays smaller than that to me. So I don't know about the pro potential, but I think a couple of more games like the one he had Saturday night, he's going to be in the conversation for the Heisman.
He's already there. I mean, I think right now he's second behind Garrett Nussmeier.
Really?
Like his odds jumped. I think at the beginning of the year, most books had him 25-1, something around there. And I think as of 2 days ago, he was 8-1. So he's really made a jump.
He's
and if behind
Nussmeier's the front runner now. Obviously, Kate Klubnik's long off that. He's deep now.
Long off. Yeah, Nussmeier I think is 750, and I think Mateer is 8.
What about Beck?
Beck I think is 10-1 at the moment. He's third, and then the kid at Utah, Devin Dampier, is also 10-1.
All right, let me give you a prediction here before week 3. Okay. Carson Beck's going to win the Heisman Trophy this year.
You're big on Carson Beck. Are you scared about this weekend or no?
No, I think that line reeks. I think Miami's going to absolutely hammer them. And
I hope you're right.
You and I debated this
last week.
We debated this a lot. I know that he is not apparently the best of dudes, but he can make every throw, and he looks like a pro making them.
They can run too, which is nice because Georgia could not run, so
True.
He had to go be Superman, and he's not a Superman kind of player. But that line is, I thought Florida was going to dominate South Florida last week. It was the exact same line, so that's why I'm a little hesitant with Miami. But I don't think Carson Beck is a crazy pick for Heisman. Mateer does have the advantage just based off of schedule, because I don't know if you've looked at that Oklahoma schedule. It's not Florida
Texas,
bad, but it's
Auburn. Who else?
Bama, LS. It's like 4 weeks in a row where it's Texas, LSU. I think A&M might be in there. Like, it's just a gauntlet that they have to run after the next couple games.
Well, nobody's got a schedule like Florida does upcoming.
Nobody. Oh my God. I mean, I don't know who they pissed off. Someone hates them.
By the way, I kind of like them on Saturday night.
I definitely like them. Everyone should be everyone should be on Florida in a bounce back spot against a team in LSU that's ranked 3 right now, but offensively they haven't exactly been spectacular.
Yeah. So, all right, let's look ahead to Saturday. First of all, I want to start with this. Is Oregon unstoppable offensively? I mean, I don't know. Oklahoma State has struggled here recently, but they had 69 early in the third quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different when you hang 69 or 70 against South Dakota State. or Oklahoma State. Like, they're just two different breeds. They hung 69 against a Power 4 team. Now, Oklahoma State doesn't have the talent that Oregon does, but still, like, it's just a different class of opponent that you're playing. I've really liked Dante Moore. You know, I thought in the era of transfer portal, him willingly sitting behind Dylan Gabriel was really impressive. So I love what they bring. I would like to see it against a little bit more competent Power 4 teams, you know, because Oklahoma State has not been relevant to me for the last 2 or 3 years. So I'd like to see it more, but Dan Lanning has long been one of my favorite coaches, and they are very, very sneaky. Everyone's paying attention to, like, Ohio State, Penn State, LSU, all the SEC teams, and they should be, but Oregon is a sneaky, sneaky good team.
September 27th, Happy Valley, Penn State in Oregon. That'll probably be, you know, easily a top 5 matchup. Who knows? It probably could be 2 versus 3 when we get there. So Clemson was in trouble against Troy after losing the opener against LSU. Klubnik's looked terrible. I never believed that he was a true NFL first-round pick. He's an athlete, but is Clemson in trouble right now? And I think they could be in trouble Saturday against Tech. What do you think?
Yeah, that 3.5 that Georgia Tech is getting at home is certainly very enticing. They're a physical football team. I'm going to be really curious to see how Clemson responds to that. They did this last year where Klubnik for the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season was a total disaster. And then eventually he turned the corner offensively. I was under the impression that there would no be disaster period this year, and they would just start where they left off last year. I've been really disappointed with them. I like Georgia Tech covering the 3.5. I think their team is really, really fun to watch, and they got a bunch of dudes on that offense. I think they're one of the few teams in the ACC that can contend with Clemson in the trenches. I'm very into that Georgia Tech 3.5.
So what is Georgia? Have we learned anything about Georgia through the first 2 games?
Not really. I mean, Gunnar Stockton can run a little bit more than I thought he could, just because we never really saw him in very limited action do that last year. So he can run a little bit, but it's so hard to tell these SEC teams in the first couple of weeks when they're not really playing anybody, because you're basically just getting your offense into a rhythm, you know. So I don't know that I've learned a whole lot from them. We will this weekend. And speaking of, like, we'll learn a lot about this Tennessee quarterback because he's been awesome through the first couple of weeks. He's, you know, Nico, what a disaster that was. But this Joey Aguilar kid can sling it. The problem is he's just not playing anybody. It's a completely
Nico's a disaster at UCLA too, which was very predictable.
Yeah, I mean, everyone should be fading UCLA at this point of the season until they bench that kid. He wanted, I don't know what $10 million, something like that. He nearly sat out a college football playoff game, and surprisingly, he can't win at UCLA. What a disaster that kid is. But this Tennessee team is fun to watch. Josh Heupel can scheme it up with the best of them. So I'm going to be really interested. I will tell you, if you're just looking for like long shot Heismans, Aguilar right now is 50-1. If he balls out this weekend, he's cutting those odds at least in half. So if you do like Tennessee, you might sprinkle a little something on a Heisman future for Aguilar, because he's going to be the one that wins it for him.
I can't wait to watch him because, you know, he's got the size, you know, to be a next level quarterback. But we got to see him against Georgia and, you know, Bama a little bit later on in the season. We talked already about this game, but South Florida, for those of you who don't know, they've won 2 games over ranked teams, Boise and the University of Florida last week. And now they go into Hard Rock in Miami to face the Canes, who are ranked 5th in the country. And they started off the season with that win over Notre Dame. They played Bethune-Cookman last week. And Miami's a 17.5-point favorite in a matchup between 2 ranked teams. I really like Miami. Who do you like in this game?
I'm leaning Miami. I am a little worried just in terms of the number with Mario Cristobal with big numbers. That makes me a little hesitant, but Miami's so much more talented than South Florida. But man, that quarterback, Byron Brown, is a tank. He can run, he can throw. He's a bit of a gamer himself. So I think that's going to be a fun one. I think it's going to, if Miami does cover that number, I do think it'll be kind of in the fourth quarter, late touchdown that puts them over the top. I don't know that I trust Miami to blow the doors off of them from the very, very jump, because I do think South Florida's a legitimate team. They're right now obviously in the driver's seat to get in to the playoff out of the group of 5 the way that they played so far.
Billy Napier, I don't know if he's on the hot seat. It feels like he should be on the hot seat.
He's on
Florida
the
goes
right
into
now.
Death Valley. Florida, remember, beat LSU late last year when the Gators got on a roll. But that's a devastating loss to lose to South Florida. He managed the clock poorly, everything. He just is. I don't know. Clearly, if they don't turn it around, and they probably won't, he's out. The Gators aren't going to put up with that. But I actually think that they're a little bit of a sleeping dog Saturday night against a team that has been good defensively. LSU has for the first time in forever, but they've struggled offensively. Why do you think that is?
I have been asking that same question. Struggling against Clemson offensively in week number 1 is one thing. And, Brian Kelly can get up at the podium and say, well, we actually dominated in the second half. And yeah, but the scorecard does not reveal
they did
that
take
domination.
One off the board that they shouldn't have taken off the board.
I know, which is terrible. He definitely caught that. But I anticipated that they were going to be in the group of teams that hung 70 this weekend, and they put up a measly 23 against a team that they should have at least hung 40. I thought 40 minimum. Potentially they'd be joining your Bamas and your Ohio States in hanging 70 this weekend, and they just didn't. I don't know if it's a scheme thing. Maybe this is one of the very few years where their wide receiver talent isn't just off the charts good like it has been the last couple of seasons, but there's something that's a little off with them offensively. They might have traded their offensive powers in for some defensive powers because, man, that defense is so much better this year. So I like Florida. I'm with you. I like Florida to cover that 7.5 based almost exclusively off of not trusting LSU to be able to put up a ton of points.
Yeah, I do like that LSU defense, though. And Harold Perkins, finally, healthy and looks like the star we all thought he would be, in college football in year 7 or whatever he's in at this point. And then we've got, 7:30 also Saturday night, Texas A&M at Notre Dame. Texas A&M's really well coached. Elko's good, don't you think?
Yeah, I love Elko. The quarterback is a question mark. They said he could come back in last week, Marcel Reed. He left the game with, I believe, a shoulder injury. They said he could have come back in, but they were crushing, so they didn't want to put him back in. The line kind of reflects that. Notre Dame didn't play last week. They got a really early bye week. Didn't play last week, coming off of a loss. We haven't really seen a ton, obviously, from the CJ Carr kid. So that line seems to make me believe that Marcel Reed might not be 100%. I think they need him. I think he's a fun quarterback. He can do it all, make some big throws, obviously really, really good with his legs. I would love to see a healthy Texas A&M. I just need to make sure that quarterback is good to go.
Good games, including, by the way, Pavia and Vandy at South Carolina on Saturday night. This is a good week 3, unlike last week, but there are some better weeks coming up. Enjoy it. Thanks. I'll talk to you this weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll talk to me this weekend. You'll talk to me tonight. Everybody come hang out with us at Honor Brewing in Sterling for the pregame show tonight.
There you go. And I will be on with Denton tonight before the game. Thanks.
See ya.
All right. Let's get back to Skins Packers after this. Washington's next two games is for this upcoming season their best opportunity from a net rest advantage standpoint. Remember, we've talked a lot about Warren Sharp's net rest data study that he does, where he basically goes through the schedule to find out which teams have big advantages in a game based on rest. And, over a period of time, teams with the least amount of rest during a 17 or 16 game schedule tend to be worse than teams with a positive net rest advantage. Well, Washington going into this season has the third worst based on the schedule, the third worst net rest edge at minus 13 days. Only Vegas and New Orleans have worse net rest advantages. The best advantages in the league are held by Detroit, Miami, the Rams, 49ers, Seahawks, Cardinals, Ravens, Cowboys, and Chargers. Now, the one big advantage game that Washington has is next week. And the reason for that is they are playing tonight on Thursday night and then won't play again for another 10 days. Meantime, their week 3 opponent, the Raiders play on Monday night. So they have 6 days coming into the Sunday game. So it's a +4 net rest day advantage for Washington. But this is their best situation of the year. I would also add, not only do the Raiders play on Monday Night Football, they play the second of a doubleheader on Monday night. There are 2 Monday night games. And that game doesn't kick in Vegas until 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Vegas time. And then they've got to come east to play an early 1 o'clock game on Sunday, but it's also a 10 a.m. for them. And we know over the years, West Coast going early to the East Coast to play a 1 o'clock game usually is advantage East Coast team. Well, now Washington's got the +4 day advantage, and also West coming east. Probably, and I would have to go back and read Sharp's breakdown. I would imagine that that's one of the biggest advantages for a team this season, especially with the Eastern time zone component of it for a West Coast team. Anyway. All right, tonight's game, if you missed it, you can go back and listen to it on the podcast or listen to it at theteam980.com. But I gave you all of the keys to a win over the Packers tonight. We'll have our predictions later on next hour in the show, give you guys a chance as well to weigh in on the show. But I wanted to talk about 2 things. What I am most confident in tonight, and then the biggest concern about the game tonight. Max has answers to both as well. I've sort of alluded to this, but I'm going to add to it. I'm very confident, even against a good defensive football team, that Washington's going to be able to really stretch them out. What you saw on Sunday is the beginning of something that will be even better this year than it was last year because of Deebo Samuel. The ability to really make teams defend the entire field because of the quarterback, obviously, because of their one wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, because of their tight end, because of their backs, plural, Eckler and maybe Bill. But then Deebo as well. Washington's going to be such a difficult team to defend. They wouldn't be this way without the quarterback and without the coordinator being creative enough. But I don't care how good defensively they are. I think you're going to have to count on Washington beating themselves to stop them from scoring, say, 24-27 a game this year. I think it's going to be closer to 27 a game when all is said and done, and maybe more than that. They're just, when you have to defend the entirety of the field like you do against this team, it is exhausting, and it's difficult on such short, prep. Last year, Washington's offense had to prep in short order after a very difficult, physically draining game against Pittsburgh, against maybe the best defensive coordinator in the game. And by the way, a talented defense. They still had the lead in that game going into the fourth quarter. And, they were banged up in a lot of spots as well heading into that game. But man, playing Washington on a short week, good luck, no matter how good you are defensively, because they can really stretch the field in both directions, vertically, horizontally. You got to cover the whole field. I feel the best about that. I just feel like no matter how good Rashawn Gary and Van Ness and Parsons and Cooper and maybe how well coached they are, I just think Washington, barring a lot of penalties or, turnovers that aren't forced, I think they're going to move the football, and I think they're going to wear Green Bay out. So the key is to get the football enough during the game, to end up with 10, 11 possessions in the game. And you got to rely on your defense to do that. And by the way, to make every possession not a possession in which you feel like, oh, if we don't score, we're going to be behind. And based on what we saw last week, there's hope, certainly, and even justification for believing that this year won't be last year, that this year won't be, you can't punt, you just can't punt that much and have a chance. Hopefully that'll be different. But the thing that I feel the best about, and I'm going to say this week in and week out until I don't see it anymore, is just how hard Washington is to defend. They're a real difficult team to defend. You got to defend the entire field against them, and it's not easy over 60 minutes. The thing that concerns me most tonight is just this idea I have in my head of the Packers and Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love being able to do what they do when they do it best, which is to keep teams completely off balance. And LaFleur gets into a rhythm with his play calling where he's running it when you think he's throwing it, and he's throwing it when you think he's running it, and they're gashing you. They've done that. They did it to Detroit, last week, and they've done it, as I mentioned in the open of the show, they've done it to Dan Quinn. They did it when he was the defensive coordinator in Dallas. They did it twice to Dan Quinn when he was the head coach in Atlanta with Matt LaFleur as the coach in Green Bay. Again, Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback for the first two of those three matchups. But Green Bay and Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur, if they can get the running game going, or if they can get into a really good balance, that's where that's my biggest concern, is being on our heels defensively. I feel better about the defense, but it was the Giants. And even if Green Bay has a big night offensively, I still think I'm going to come away feeling better after the first two games about what they could be defensively. But this is a challenge. Matt LaFleur, I don't think he's underrated. I just think he's outstanding as an offensive head coach and play caller. And he gets into a rhythm, and you've seen it with the Packers in recent years with Jordan Love. They get into a rhythm where they're able to run the football, and now all of a sudden play action and boot and everything else. And they've got all these receivers, and nobody's great, but they're all pretty good, and they're all a little bit different. The tight end's going to be a problem tonight. That's my biggest concern, is that defensively we're off balance and on our heels because Green Bay's able to get it into that situation. But I feel great about what Washington can do offensively tonight. Max, what do you feel good about? What concerns you the most?
So I feel pretty good about the umbrella of our defense. So that would be our corners and our safeties. I think that they're going to do a good job tonight of keeping everything in front of them, not letting busted coverages happen, not just keeping guys in check. Now, Jordan Love and the Packers, they like to throw a lot of deep balls against press man. Joe Witt likes to have his secondary in press man. So it's going to be a lot of that tonight. So they're going to take their shots. It's just going to be how well can our corners and safety stick with them, and they have to keep it clean. That is paramount. You can't be given free yards for an offensive or a defensive pass interference that goes for 40 yards and basically revives a drive for the Packers. I think that's going to be key tonight. It's going to come down to that. And then another thing I'm confident about is the defensive size that we have in our front now, being able to at least slow down Josh Jacobs, not stop him, because that has proved kind of impossible over the years, but Just keeping just defensively, just keeping guys in check and hopefully, I don't want to say getting ahead of Matt LaFleur, but just being right there with him the whole way, not letting them get too high or hopefully too low. But always number 5, always feel good about him. He's always going to give us a shot. That's why, I can't. I mean, you're going to go into every game feeling like that this team has a chance to win because of him, and we've said that for years. But no, the things I'm worried about is Josh Connerly versus Micah Parsons. It's going to be an issue. He might be on a snap count, but I believe Micah Parsons played 29 snaps versus the Lions. I believe 13 of those came in the fourth quarter. So it's going to be, you're going to be getting a pretty fresh Micah Parsons pretty late in the game when you're gassed already. So it's going to be about how Washington kind of, just keeps executing their game plan. Jaden's going to have to be aware of where he is at all times. And then the other thing on the other side of the ball, covering Tucker Kraft and Green Bay's tight ends. They're all massive, hulking individuals. So that's going to be a challenge just in terms of covering him. I'm not really sure who's going to be the best matchup in terms of size and speed. I think we might be seeing a lot of Tyler Owens, Jeremy Reeves covering these tight ends. So it's going to be cover in the middle of the field is going to be a big worry for me. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Played a lot of zone last week. That'd be interesting if they end up trying to run with a lot of man against Green Bay. They switched it up and they disguised it well, but it was easy to disguise it well and to get some results against Russell Wilson last week.
And speaking of disguising it well, that's another thing that Green Bay's defense does great. And that's another thing that Jaden does great is diagnosing coverages after the ball is snapped. So that's another reason that's another thing I feel good and confident about.
Yeah. All right. Charch is going to join us next. We'll do some fantasy football talk. We've got our first edition of our NFL Power Rankings. We'll do that before the end of the hour. And then next hour, we'll give you guys a chance to weigh in on tonight's game. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We are also free and live on the Odyssey app. I want to tell you about Window Nation's current deal. It's a good one. It's their most popular offer of the year. Window Nation's offering buy two, get two free, where you have the option of not paying anything for 2 years. So no down payment, no payments, and no interest charged until the year 2027. September's a really good month to protect your home with new windows if you've got older windows. Cool weather still a few weeks away. The cold weather still a few months away. But now's a good time to get the windows swapped out. If you've got older windows, it takes a day or less. The estimate takes an hour or less. And that's where you start, by calling Window Nation at 866-90Nation or heading to windownation.com for a free in-home, no obligation estimate. They'll come out to your home when it's convenient for you. They'll give you an estimate. You'll find out which windows actually need to be replaced. But if you decide to move forward, you're going to move forward with a company that has a great product, that is phenomenal when it comes to taking care of the customer, and right now offers buy two, get two free with paying nothing for 2 full years. Call them now at 866-90Nation or visit windownation.com. Thursdays in this spot, we welcome onto the show our friend Paul Charchian. Charch, of course, is a fantasy football expert for longer than anybody has been that. His podcasts are called Fantasy Football Weekly and Chop. You can follow Charch at Paul Charchian on X and on Twitter. Once a year, sometimes not, because we've played the Thursday Thanksgiving Day game. It seems like a lot in recent years, but we get an opportunity here in week 2 to talk about our team on Thursday Night Football. Before we get to fantasy talk for not only tonight and the weekend, what did you think of week 1? And what do you make of the matchup tonight? Who do you like?
Well, week 1 specific to the Commanders, do you mean, or week 1 just in general trends?
Well, give me week 1 in general. That was a terrible setup. I really wanted to find out who you like tonight, but it was a terrible setup. It happens. Give me your biggest takeaways from week 1, league-wide.
Daniel Jones was, I think the biggest surprise, pleasant surprise, Daniel Jones, who just played great. And at one point, I'm watching the Colts game. And yes, I watched the Colts game. I don't recommend it, but I did it. And suddenly I'm saying to myself, I hadn't ever thought of the Colts as being deep at wide receiver options, but they kind of are.
Yeah.
Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, and Adonai Mitchell for the big plays downfield. And then Tyler Warren, the first-round tight end, Kevin. Oh, very first NFL game. And they're using him like in his prime Tony Gonzalez. 9 targets. 24 routes run, 52 air yards for Tyler Warren in his NFL debut, and he looked really good. The only asterisk on the whole Colts performance is it was Miami, and that team could be totally broken. And it reminds me a little bit of New Orleans. Week 1 last year, New Orleans put up 47 points against what would go on to be a horrible Carolina defense.
And then put up a bunch against the Cowboys in week 2, right?
That's right. Yes, they were the hottest through 2 weeks. The Saints were the hottest offense in the NFL last year.
And then what happened?
Now, and then they went on to win one more game the rest of the year, and it was Spencer Rattler time and Jake Hayner and all the bad things that happened with the Saints. Coaches get fired, and Saints looked a little better. Spencer Rattler had a lot more poise in year number 2, and he might turn out to be non-awful.
Non-awful. That's a new description. I think you just nailed one of the, perfect examples of what I have harped on for years, which is early season NFL is often very much fool's gold and a head fake. They're still basically in preseason mode. They don't hit, they don't tackle, they don't play. And you look back on week 1, week 2, and sometimes it's like, no, this team turned out to be completely different. Now, New Orleans, you could chalk it up to, injuries for sure. Yeah. But still, through 2 weeks last year, they had scored 90-something points in 2 games and looked unstoppable. Yeah.
And then, and you mentioned all the injuries, Derek Carr, but then Chris Olave got knocked out. Rashid Shaheed got knocked out.
Yeah.
They were using some poor kid from Yale as their starting wide receiver, name I don't even remember anymore. It was bad.
Yeah. Well, Washington got thumped in the opener last year against Tampa and was like, it's going to be another one of those years. You just don't know. Yeah. How do you see the matchup tonight? No, not fantasy-wise, but, in terms of the game and how it plays out.
I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, and many of the Packers games will be, despite plenty of offensive talent on both sides. I can't wait to get a longer look at Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And by the way, tip of the hat to you. When I mentioned Chris Rodriguez, you went, whoa. This team's not going to have four running backs active. And you definitely sniffed that one out. So a tip of the hat to you.
I didn't know which one would be inactive, but I thought there was a good chance of one of the two. By the way, congratulations to you on Jordan Mason. That was a call.
Thank you.
You basically said, look, be careful with Aaron Jones because Jordan Mason at some point is going to be the guy, and he was the guy on Monday night. I thought the running game with Mason is what really started the turnaround.
Absolutely did. When they got to a point in the third quarter where the Vikings could finally get Jordan Mason going, get that running game going, that got a much improved offensive line, at least on paper. the whole game script flipped. Now J.J. McCarthy's got time in the pocket, and for J.J., and a fascinating game for him, and one that I am not going to forget for a long time. Because he had missed his entire rookie year and wasn't even able to practice, he hadn't been under center in a real game position for 660 days. And that first half was bad. Getting calls, getting plays started on time, not being able to get them started on time, and just having a lot of trouble in the pocket, and the protection wasn't great early. But once he settled down, he looked really good. Jordan Mason looked good. He did end up throwing that long corner touchdown to Aaron Jones, who helped us out that way. But Jones is not going to be catching long bombs very often. No. And Jordan Mason looked like the better runner of the two.
Interesting that you see tonight as a low-scoring game. I think both quarterbacks and both offenses are capable of a shootout. And I know it's Thursday night, and you never know what you're going to get on Thursday night. But I think that, and this impacts obviously fantasy decisions. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, high 20s, low 30s, both teams.
Yeah, look, there's enough offensive talent on the field to get there, certainly. Yeah. And I don't want to overreact to the Packers just hammering the Lions. That's not going to happen every week. And the Lions had a lot of moving parts. Yeah, obviously changes at offensive coordinator, but also all those injured players who missed time last year coming back. Some of them looked rusty. That might have been part of it. Where I think there's going to be some struggles is on both sides is passing the ball. And Kevin, I say that even though Jordan Love looked really good last week. He was poised. It was an easy victory, which maybe that was part of it as well. But just 6 incompletions, a lot of time in the pocket, and as I mentioned, he looked really poised. His touchdown pass to Tucker Kraft across the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Third down, too. Third and 8. Yeah.
3rd and 8. And he went to the end zone. And Kraft, when Love released the ball, Kraft hadn't yet made his in-cut break, and then makes the cut. And then where Love put the ball up at a height where only Kraft could get it, extended right in front of him. Just a beautiful pass. But your secondary has become one that I've stopped doubting. I mean, once you guys got to about week 4 of last year, that was a good secondary. You just hammered Russell Wilson so badly that Brian Daboll had to clarify that they're not yanking their starter after one game.
He was terrible, Charge. Russ is a backup quarterback now in the NFL, I think.
Yes, it's the Jackson Dart time is coming. It's just a matter of, when do they decide to pull the Band-Aid off and make that call.
So as it relates to...
I think...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I can see a scenario here where both quarterbacks end up struggling. It's 2 very good defenses and pass rushes that can be effective. In the Packers' case, can be really effective.
How do you pick the Packer receivers, and pass catchers, not just the receivers, but you mentioned Tucker Kraft. I mean, by the way, tell me that this is highly unusual, because it seems highly unusual to me. 16 completions for Jordan Love to 10 different receivers. That's like almost impossible to do, right?
It is. And that is my worry. And we saw a lot of this last year too. I think we're going to get it again. And it's disaster for fantasy players because they don't have a go-to receiver. We thought Matthew Golden might be that guy. And in time, he might turn into a go-to receiver, but not through week 1. That's for sure. Even though he's the star of preseason and training camp and everybody's talking about how great he was, Matthew Golden only on the field for 23 snaps, and he only ran 18 routes. And, they didn't have to pass a lot because it was a blowout win. So, maybe those numbers go up. But this is also very consistent with how Matt LaFleur's run this offense in the past. They only one receiver ran half of the team's routes, and that was Romeo Doubs. And he's nothing special. And it was only 18 routes, by the way. He's not a game changer. Jaden Reed's playing with a Jones fracture in his foot. Yeah. Jones fractures are horrible.
He played well, though. He looked good. He didn't look injured.
He looked totally unaffected. And that makes me think that Jaden Reed's pregame morphine drip must look like Niagara Falls.
There are days where I'd love to have that kind of morphine drip. We're talking
right
to,
now,
of course, Yeah, Paul Charchian with us every Thursday to talk fantasy football. Anything else from tonight, or can we move to Sunday? Because there's some interesting calls.
No. We got to talk about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, 10 for
he walked
82.
out of
Not bad for a rookie.
Not bad for a rookie. Walked out of this week as Pro Football Focus's highest rated runner. Not among rookies, among all runners, including Derrick Henry just ran for almost 200 yards.
Yeah.
And they chose Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt ahead of him. 7th round rookie, good enough to get Brian Robinson traded. You mentioned 8 yards per carry and some breakaway runs, including that 40-yard gain in which he sized up safety Tyler Nubin coming. Tyler Nubin is like, the last line of defense for the Giants, and juked him so hard, the MetLife Stadium crew is still jackhammering his jock out of the field turf in that stadium. It was a great play.
That's not
and what we saw from Bill.
Yeah.
No, that isn't very pleasant to think about. To me, it's the behind the line of scrimmage vision and footwork for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He gets the ball. The vision shows him what's developing and if he needs to make any changes. And then the footwork. It's 2 or 3 steps, and now he's on a totally different trajectory. And now some acceleration kicks in, and you got a problem. I was very impressed with him, and it looks like you found your new number one running back.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting tonight. I wonder if Rodriguez will be up. I know that they like him too, but clearly Merritt, or as we call him, Bill, he calls himself Bill, was their lead guy. Eckler was actually in there to start the game as their lead back, but Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt came in. He was, by the way, just named Pepsi Rookie of the Week in the NFL.
Wow. Wow. That's
right.
Good for him. And and by the way, it's been a while since you've had a running back you've loved there. I harped on Brian Robinson all both of his years, 3 years, 2 years that he was there. Just like, Kevin, he's just a guy. And I think you've got somebody who's better than that now.
So what are you doing with 49ers Saints with Brock Purdy and George Kittle out? I mean, you can't possibly think about starting Mac Jones, even though the opponent's terrible, right?
No, can't. It's the Saints, so it feels tempting, but it's Mac Jones. And the Saints, by the way, that defense might be a little better than we thought. They just held Kyler Murray to 163 passing yards, although I'll say this. I think the plan for Kyler Murray going to this game was basically, don't give away the game, Kyler. It's going to be all short stuff. He had the 4th shortest average distance to throw. And then we're just going to wait for Spencer Rattler to give us the game. And that seemed to be the game plan for the Cardinals, who played very conservatively. Maybe the 49ers won't, but no George Kittle. Juwan Jennings is a question mark with a shoulder injury for him. We don't know if he's going to be able to go. And Mac Jones is at the helm here. This doesn't feel great. Jones got a lot of starts last year, 7 of them with Jacksonville. And I know most of us have erased Jacksonville Mac Jones starts from our memory, but I forced myself to go back and look. He averaged 201 yards and 0.8 passing touchdowns per game. The only Niner you can consider other than Christian McCaffrey is their sophomore rookie Pearsall, who had put up 108 yards last week.
Game.
And really, he did. I mean, really, this whole passing game goes through Ricky Pearsall. Get this. Average distance of pass to Ricky Pearsall last week, 21 yards. There's heaving bombs to Ricky Pearsall downfield, and maybe they're going to continue to do the same thing here.
The New Orleans game Sunday against Arizona was not a much talked about game anywhere, around the league, except for in Phoenix and in New Orleans. The Saints were down there at the end of the game with a legitimate chance to tie. They were in the red zone 4 times, only came away with 1 touchdown. They moved the football in that game. You mentioned Spencer Rattler being maybe not awful, but he also, they've got, with Olave and Shaheed back, and of course, Alvin Kamara, they have some players if the quarterback can just be, as you described, non-awful.
They do. And, Chris Olave, one concussion away from, probably his last concussion in the NFL, but he hasn't suffered it yet. Sheehan is a great downfield player.
Yeah.
And one of the best fantasy pickups you can make right now is, and he might be available in your league, is their tight end, Juwan Johnson. This offense is largely going through him.
Yeah.
He was among all tight ends last week, highest scoring tight end in fantasy last week and highest utilization last week. So Juwan Johnson's going to be a big part of this, targeted 11 times. That's more than any tight end was last week. So go get Juwan Johnson if he's available in your league.
Yeah, the game Sunday with Mac Jones and, the 49ers have on paper one of those schedules that looks easy, and everybody, I think, justifiably said before the season started, if they stay healthy, there's no reason they can't get back to double-digit wins and maybe even vie for, a 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. But they're banged up again, and this Saints game seems a bit tricky, maybe. I mean, maybe they think they can win it with Mac Jones, but the Saints moved the football consistently against Arizona on Sunday, which is interesting.
Yeah. And Arizona's defense is not that bad. It was middle of the pack or even better last year. So that's not nothing. I mean, if you're in the Survivor League, I think the panic games that I do not want to sweat this weekend: Cleveland against Baltimore. Cleveland, we were nervous about Cleveland last week, potentially upsetting the Bengals, and they should have if their kicker had made either of his 2 misses.
Oh, they absolutely
the Browns would have won that game.
Yeah,
absolutely. You hold Cincinnati to 7 yards in the second half, and
I think it was 2 yards, wasn't it? 2 yards in the second half.
I heard 7, but maybe it's
whatever. It was 141 total yards. Unbelievable.
Insane. Yeah, unbelievable. And,
Myles Garrett,
the Browns
Myles Garrett's the best defensive player. I mean, we could say it's Aaron Donald of the last, 10, 15 years, but Myles Garrett's right there.
He's in the conversation for sure. He's so good. And that's, Baltimore usually finds ways to get wins against Cleveland. They probably will here too, but that's the game. I wouldn't want to sweat that game. And frankly, 49ers Saints, that's your survivor pool worries to me are those two where that thing could go sideways. And, now those are going to be heavily, heavily used teams in Survivor.
How about this about the Baltimore-Cleveland game on Sunday? I don't think I've mentioned this, Max, this week. So the Ravens are celebrating 30 years as a franchise, as a Ravens franchise in Baltimore against the Cleveland Browns, the team that moved from Cleveland to Baltimore.
That's so tacky.
And this is Flacco's first game against his former team. He has not played, whether it was in Cleveland or Denver or the Jets or wherever he's been. He has not played the Ravens. And I got to tell you, I watched some of that game. He can still spin it with the best of them, and he deserved a much better fate on Sunday against Cincinnati. They should have won that game. He had 2 picks that were clearly not his fault. They were, drops that bounced up into the air oddly and got picked off. I think that's going to I think you've nailed it. That's going to be a tricky game for Baltimore coming off that emotional loss, I think.
I'm with you. Flacco played well, threw the ball 45 times in the game, and you hit on it. He had two drops by Jerry Jeudy and another one that went to Cedric Tillman that both resulted in interceptions that were not on Flacco. And they've got this rookie tight end, Harold Fanning, who led all of college football in receptions and yards at the tight end position last year, and he walked right out in his first ever game to 9 targets.
Yeah,
this Harold Fanning kid looks really good too, and David Jones is good. They've got a plethora of targets.
Yeah, he looked impressive, very impressive. Give me, and we're talking about Charch, of course. Give me your takeaway from Pittsburgh Jets, Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers.
I believe we talked about Justin Fields last week, and I was like, I don't like the way this thing shapes up. Justin Fields against a really good defense. Steelers hadn't allowed rushing touchdowns. Fields can't throw, and all he did was play basically the best game of his career. And remember, I thought Fields was dead in the water because they had just lost their starting guard, Elijah Vera Tucker, who's their best offensive lineman, and they were playing TJ Watt. I'm like, this thing looks terrible on paper. And Fields was legitimately great, and not just as a runner, as a passer. He was Pro Football Focus's number 2 graded passer last week. Passer, not even factoring in his rushing, which was very good as well. Only 8 incompletions. And Fields has always been way better in fantasy than reality because of the rushing that he brings. Now maybe it's going to develop into both, and maybe we totally misfired on the Jets. Breece Hall looked really good. Garrett Wilson looked really good. Maybe this is going to be the team I was most wrong about. I thought the Jets were just going to pack it in, and the first time offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrad with virtually no play calling experience. I thought this whole thing was going to be bad. Jets were shocking.
And what about the Steelers offense with Aaron Rodgers?
Another case where I did not expect Aaron Rodgers to sling it so well. He distributed the ball to a lot of different people, so it wasn't the laser focus on just one guy that we have seen for a lot of what Aaron Rodgers has done the past 3-4 years. And so I like the ball distribution a lot and better there. They don't have a running game in Pittsburgh yet. That's something that they got to figure their way out of. And the rookie Caleb Johnson from Iowa that people are excited about only got on the field for 1 carry for -2 yards. They got to get that part figured out. But Metcalf going to Calvin Austin, Freiermuth, my guy Jonnu Smith, all heavily involved. Aaron Rodgers throws 4 touchdowns. That game when we went into Sunday feeling like Steelers Jets was going to be the worst game on the schedule, and it ended up being 66 points scored and a ton of fun.
Welcome to trying to handicap the NFL. All right, last one on Detroit. Right. Time to panic on the Lions offense without Ben Johnson or not?
I would buy low right now. I think we're going to look back and go, it was week 1, against a very good Packers defense. Packers were already a top 10 defense before they added Micah Parsons. And it's the very first game from the new offensive and defensive coordinators, John Morton, the offensive coordinators. And, I think we're going to look back and go, well, we could have given John Morton more than 1 week to get this thing figured out. And if you can buy low on Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff and David Montgomery and Jameson Williams, so many good players, I'd consider just trying to buy low. Here comes the Bears defense this week. Their opponent, they just got picked apart by J.J. McCarthy in his NFL debut. McCarthy set 7 records last week. So, although Chicago will get back 2 of their 3 starting cornerbacks, and that will make them a better defense. But still, I think the Lions bounce back here, and if you can buy low, I'd go do it.
At Paul Charchian on X. Thanks. We'll talk next week. Enjoy the game tonight.
You too. You got a prediction for the game?
The one thing that I feel good about is in conflict with what you think. I think both teams are going to move the football, and they're going to be points, and it's going to come down to kind of red zone. I think both teams will get into the red zone a bunch, and which defense sort of stands tall there. I don't see many teams honestly slowing Washington down this year from moving the football. Nobody really did it last year, and I think they're they just stretch the field all over the place with Debo now. It's going to be fun to watch him, I think, this year with Jaden. We'll see.
The Debo integration was very intentional, and they did it in week 1 because they want every team to have to prep for the unique things that Debo Samuel brings to the field. And this is one of the shortcomings of Debo's time in San Francisco, where there'd be 3 straight games where he's getting 2 and 3 touches in those games. And Debo is such an oddball talent, and he does so many different things. I love that Cliff Kingsbury immediately put on tape, was it 10 targets that went to him in a game?
Yeah.
Make defenses have to account for that and play differently. I thought that was very smart usage.
Yeah, I think they are with, Philly, Baltimore, Cincinnati for slightly different reasons, Buffalo in that they're the hardest teams to defend because you've got to defend the entire field. There is just no part of the field that's safe. They can throw it deep because Jaden can throw a great deep ball with Terry. Now you can stretch them with Debo sideways, and Cliff just does a phenomenal job of making it really difficult. And you've got a quarterback who you got to spy. Basically, you got to take one guy out and spy him on every play. Green Bay's very good defensively. Very impressed with their personnel. But Philly was great defensively last year, Charch, and Washington in their last two games, including the championship game, moved the football at will against them.
Fair points. And maybe we'll down the road we'll talk about Philadelphia's defensive shortcomings that showed up last Thursday and find out if that ends up being
it will help with Jalen Carter back on the field.
Yeah, that will help. I'm a little surprised that he didn't suspend him for this coming game. Which I thought was absolutely in place. Get ejected in the first one and have more punishment, but didn't go down that way yet.
All right. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks,
I'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you later. You too.
Paul Charchi and everybody. We'll do a couple of what he gots when you come back. A couple of interesting ones. We'll save power rankings for next hour. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. Here is what's happening. We start off in the NHL. Kirill Kaprizov, one of the NHL's best young talents, has turned down a contract extension with the Minnesota Wild. That would have been an 8-year deal worth $128 million or $16 per year. That would have made him the highest paid player in NHL history. The Wild's GM, Bill Guerin, says he doesn't want all-out panic from the fans, but Kaprizov can become a free agent at the end of this season, and the list of suitors will certainly be a long one. The Nats, they fall to the Marlins by a score of 8-3. An okay night for Jake Irvin as he goes 5 innings, giving up a few runs in the 6th, and it all snowballed from there as the Nats gave up all 8 runs in the later innings of the game. They will reset for one final matchup versus the Marlins this series. Mackenzie Gore on the bump versus Ryan Weathers. First pitch at 6:40. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:10. And tonight, the Washington Commanders, they play a football game. They will take on the Green Bay Packers from Lambeau Field on Amazon Prime. Injury report for Washington. Tress Way is questionable with a back injury. Mitch Wisnowski ready to go if he can't. And Dietrich Wise, a limited participant in practice yesterday, is listed as questionable as well. Kickoff set for 8:15 on Amazon Prime. Pregame starts right here on the Team 980 at 6:30 with Denton Day and Linnell Willingham. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season and pregame, postgame, and halftime shows for the Commanders. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
So did you see what the NBA is going to do with the long shots that never get taken at the end of quarters? So if you follow the NBA like I do, over the last, I don't know, 10 plus years, players to avoid lowering their overall field goal percentage at the end of quarters, in halves, not the end of games if you need the bucket, and you're down by, 1 or 2 or 3 or the game's tied. But they will typically let the clock expire and either dribble the ball, as the clock expires out in the backcourt, or they'll let the clock expire and then shoot it from three-quarters court or half court because they don't want the miss to go on their field goal percentage. It's been one of the real aggravating things about the NBA. I think it's been incredibly selfish. Especially now, the NBA's got so many guys that literally from half court can almost shoot jump shots. From three-quarters court, it's not even a heave anymore. It's almost a shot. But no, they don't want to take a hit to their field goal percentage. And we've put up with it as NBA fans forever. Well, the NBA finally has changed the way they will handle end of quarter for the first three quarters, what they call heaves, not shots, but heaves. Anything that starts in the back court at the end of the first, second, or third quarter and ends with a shot further than 36 feet will not go on the individual shooter's field goal percentage, but will go on the team's overall field goal percentage with a miss. Now we'll see, 1.3 seconds left after a free throw, backcourt, end of first quarter, throw it into the backcourt and let somebody shoot it from three-quarters court, or throw it to half court, let somebody turn around and fire a half-court shot. I mean, think about just over the years, NBA fans, basketball fans have put up with that. I mean, you've got a team and you're like, no, take this shot and try to get three. Why not? Well, because it's going to hurt my field goal percentage. It's been insulting for years, honestly. I don't know what took the league this long to figure it out. But how about this? Once this came out yesterday that the NBA is going to change this, I saw this from CBS Sports. Nikola Jokic last year took 22 what they call heaves, starts in the backcourt, ends with a 36-foot shot or longer. No other player in the league took more than 12. He took 22. You know why? Because he couldn't give a crap about his field goal percentage. He cares more about trying to win the game. He made 2 of them, by the way. If you remove 20 of the misses, his three-point shooting percentage would have gone to 44.3% instead of 41.7%. I love the Joker. All-time great. Meantime, sticking in the NBA, did you see what Adam Silver said in the NBA's commissioner press conference yesterday as the league is a few weeks away from the beginning of its preseason? He was asked about the rising cost of watching all of these NBA games now that the NBA has started this $76 billion. I'm sorry, Max, what did you say?
I actually have audio of this if you want to hear it.
I do want to hear it. Go ahead and play it.
There's a huge amount of our content that people can essentially consume for free. I mean, this is very much a highlights-based sport, so, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it, any service, the New York Times for that matter, to the extent that your content is not behind a paid firewall. There's an enormous amount of content out there. YouTube, by another example, that is advertising-based that consumers can consume.
He referred to it as a highlight-based league. Adam Silver's pretty sharp. He's pretty savvy. That's a pretty dumb thing to say. They just signed a $76 billion television contract to go back on NBC for the first time in forever, to be a part of Amazon sports coverage, ESPN, Disney, ABC, the whole thing. Really $76 billion over, I think, 10 years. And he's essentially saying, yeah, the cost is pretty high, but don't worry about it. You can catch the highlights for free. We're a highlight-based league. Wow. You know what, though? He's not wrong. He's not wrong. The NBA fan is younger, and they consume sports differently than older fans do. They consume it via social media, TikTok, etc. And the NBA, I think, this is the way I feel, is a totally different sport regular season than it is postseason. I could never consume just highlights during the playoffs. You miss the essence of what is a completely different sport during its postseason. They don't play the game the same way. They don't play with the same level of urgency. Every game matters versus regular seasons where you've got 82 of them. I don't even consume the NBA via highlights during the regular season. I mean, when my team is good, I'll watch the NBA during the regular season, but it's been a while since we've had that. But for that to come out of the commissioner's mouth, I would bet you he's regretting that, because that's not what Amazon and NBC and Disney want to hear after paying what was a remarkable price for a product that, let's face it, is nowhere near what the NFL or college football is in this country. I had something else here for what do you got? Oh, how about this? You know, college football, they set their schedules, in advance, few years, sometimes 5, 6, 7 years in advance. You've got games contracted between two schools. This from FBSschedules.com. James Madison and Liberty have contracted to play against each other on September 15th, 2040. This is the furthest contracted football game on record. So mark it down, Madison Dukes fans. And by the way, Denton Day's, Liberty alma mater. Mark it down. Don't miss it. September 15th, 2040. We've got Madison and Liberty. Never heard of anything like that. To schedule a game 15 years in advance. Apparently, Liberty's been installed as a 2.5-point favorite in that game in 2040.
Kids are in kindergarten right now who will be playing in that game, Kevin.
Yeah. All right. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. What do you feel really good about tonight? What concerns you tonight? Predictions later on next hour. We'll also do some NFL power rankings for the first time. But phone lines are open, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What are you confident you're going to see tonight? What are you concerned about tonight? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget that you can watch the show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button when you get there.
Are you higher now on the Packers or more down on the Lions after what you saw this week?
I'm certainly down on the Lions. And I do think there's great reason for concern with the way that offense looked without Ben Johnson. But I want to give it a week before we just say that they're awful because of how good the Packers defense was. Now, we have seen the 2000 Ravens and we've seen the 76 Steelers. I'm not putting them in that conversation. But what they did to the Lions on Sunday was maybe the greatest performance by any one unit all last week. And that includes the Bills offense. 9 tackles for a loss, 4 sacks. And of course, Micah Parsons gets the headlines, 29 snaps. I look at guys who have been considered busts the last few years in the draft. Quay Walker, unblockable. Rashawn Gary, unblockable. Lucas Van Ness, unblockable. They play Washington tomorrow night, Molly. And I know we're looking at this as like this battle of the Titans. Like, don't be shocked if they come out there and they shut down Jaden Daniels. That is how good this Packers defense is. And I believe Jeff Hafley is operating at such a level right now that this might be the story of the NFC. I don't think it's overreacting. I don't think it's hyperbole. I think that this defense is so good and so loaded at every single position with all this collection of first-round talent that we could be looking at a lot of teams saying, what's wrong with the offense? No. Packers defense is that good.
That was Peter Schrager from ESPN with a don't be surprised if. That's actually what we're going to do right now. We're going to switch it up. Don't be surprised if. Give me a don't be surprised if for tonight's game. His don't be surprised if is if the Green Bay Packers dominate Jaden Daniels and Washington's offense tonight. 301-230-0980. You like the way I switched that around, Max?
I do.
Off of that soundbite that you gave me.
It worked great.
Don't be surprised if ... in tonight's game. This is a segment we do during the football season, and it can have to do. You can answer it across the NFL universe, college football universe. This is just specific to tonight's game. Don't be surprised if. I'll give you a don't be surprised if, Peter Schrager. Don't be surprised if Jaden Daniels throws for 250 and rushes for at least 80 in this game. Because I do feel like it's a good match. I agree. Green Bay's very talented defensively. And I think there could be some, I'm going to have to strap the team to the back to move the football and score points. 250 through the air, 80 or more on the ground. That would be 330 plus of total offense. I see Jaden playing a great football game and a bit of a hero ball game, which we saw a lot last year. I could definitely see a lot of the offense, going right through Jaden Daniels, off schedule, even on schedule. I think we're going to see a shootout tonight. I do. I felt that way about the opener. We didn't get that. We did not get. I thought did the Giants might be able to move it, and I certainly thought Washington could score 30 plus, and they didn't because they self-inflicted with penalties, drop balls, etc. My don't be surprised if Jaden Daniels accounts for 330 plus yards of offense, 250 through the air, 80 plus, and straps this team to its back to give it a chance to win tonight at Lambeau. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Don't be surprised if what happens tonight. Finish off that sentence. Max, do you have one?
Yes, I do. Don't be surprised if Washington's defense comes out of this game with 2 turnovers, 2 takeaways, and that becomes the difference of the game.
You know what? Something like that would absolutely be the difference in the game. They had no takeaways against Russ in the Giant offense. And Green Bay certainly did a phenomenal job protecting Jordan Love against Detroit last week and protecting the football last week. They spread it around, that is for sure. But it would be nice to see the beginning of a big takeaway season tonight, week 2 on the road at Lambeau. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Don't be surprised if, and give us the don't be surprised if what happens and something that happens tonight. Let's go to Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, go ahead and start it off for us.
Hey, Kevin, don't be surprised if we win by double digits tonight. Kevin, we got a good team. They're probably thinking about today and all week how they're going to stop us, our offense. I mean, I know they got a good team, good defense, but Kevin, we're going to score tonight. Those few plays that we missed out on last week, being that was the first time they really played together all year, I think we hit some of those tonight, and that 30, 35 points is very realistic to me. And we'll win tonight, Kevin. We're a better football team, okay? We're a better football team. We're going out there to hit them in the mouth for 60 minutes to win the game. And can I piggyback off something yesterday? You know, with your new schedule, sometimes I can't listen live, so I have to catch up end of the day. So I'm buying one thing about this team this year, the physicality that we are in the trenches on both sides of the ball, Kevin. If we stay physical like we were last weekend, we're going to win a lot of games, and we're going to push people around all year long if we keep that mentality that we did, because we were excellent in the trenches last weekend. Okay,
We were.
Excellent
Tonight's a different animal in terms of the opponent, no doubt.
Well, I understand that, but it's going to be hard pressed for us, our offensive line, to face a better front than we did last week, Kevin.
Yeah,
okay?
and
we didn't hit some of those guys. We didn't even hear their names called, Kevin. We dominated.
well, we heard Abdul Carter's name called. We heard Brian Burns' name called. You know, there were some disruptive plays by the Giant defense, but I'm with you. Like they played a good defense last week. They're playing another good defense. There's nothing I really get concerned about with our offense on the field. Tonight, tonight the concern for me would be, you know, we're facing actually a real quarterback, and, you know, their offensive line injuries could be a huge factor in the game tonight. We'll see, you know, if Banks and Tom are suited up and ready to go. They're two starters at right tackle and at left guard. That could be a big factor in the game, but there isn't going to be a game this year, I don't think, where I'm like, yeah, we can't move the football. We're going to have to get lucky to move it. No, every opponent's looking at our team for once and saying, how do we stop this team where we've got to defend the entire field and at the same time spy the quarterback consistently? So I feel good about the offense, no doubt. Thank you. Double digits. It's possible. Anything's possible tonight. Thursday night games are weird, and we're capable of hammering anybody. That's for sure. Let's go to Mike in Annapolis. Mike, don't be surprised if.
Well, I'm kind of picking up on your take from the last segment. So don't be surprised if there's a heck of a lot of offense, you know, in the stats, yards, all that good noise, but ain't going to be a lot of points. I think both teams will be able to get down in the red zone, but both teams' defenses are gonna man up when it comes down to it. When they're in the red zone, because here's the thing, like, you know, we saw Devo with the score last week, right? For lack of a better term, it's kind of a trick play, right? But when you get down in the red zone, there's not that much, frankly, space to pull those kind of moves off. And both these defenses, I think, like I said, are gonna man up and they're gonna lock it down. So a lot of yardage in the stat sheet, but not a lot of points on the scoreboard.
Yeah, look, red zone in a game like this is always massive. You know, we see that, you know, two good teams offensively that can move the football. We're hoping defensively, a different team for us this year. And if that's the case, you know, advantage our team if our defense is better as a red zone defense than it was a year ago, because Jaden, his ability to extend the play in a condensed field situation is a massive advantage. That's why Baltimore and Josh Allen in Buffalo and Mahomes, when you've got that mobility and that playmaking ability on a condensed field to extend the play, you've got a much better chance. Washington last year was 6th in the league in red zone offense. And I don't see that, you know, changing much this year. Let's go to Paulie. Paulie, don't be surprised if. Go ahead.
Big guy, how you doing, man?
What's
Hell
up?
to the W, man. Don't be surprised if this game is a laugh in the third quarter. Washington dominates this game, man. Like, I know you like Jordan Love. I like Jordan Love, too, but I'm not fearing Jordan Love. Like, I think our defense is enough there for we're gonna put enough pressure on. We might put this boy out the game somewhere in the third quarter. You might see Willis tonight.
You know what? You might see Willis. You know, I was looking through some Green Bay stuff this week. There are people in Green Bay that think Willis could be involved in packages, like short yardage packages, you know, where they use him on zone reads and stuff. Because he actually played well last year, if you recall, when Jordan Love was out.
Right. And let me say this, too. Yeah. Don't be surprised if Cliff Kingsbury, if he does his homework. Last year, Parsons in Dallas, that first game, we neutralized Michael Parsons with the read option. Make Michael Parsons think and not react. If you make him think, that's how I remember with two drives, we read option. That was the best we looked in that game against the Cowboys when we went to our read option package and we neutralized Michael Parsons. So that's why this game is not going to be close tonight, man. You know, I know Green Bay, they beat Detroit, but Detroit, man, Detroit's not the same team in game one that they was throughout last year. Just like, you know, the Giants aren't the same team. Well, they are the same team, but the Giants are not that good of a team. You said it yourself. Week one is a head fake. So we got to look at that from both teams and both games, not just one game. You know what I mean? So, like I said, don't be surprised. This game is a bore midway through the third quarter with Washington kicking their ass.
I hope you're right. I would be. I think I'd be surprised by that.
34-20 our way, man. Hell to the W.
We'll ask for predictions on the scores at the end. You just always have to, you know, you always have to beat us to the next segment. It's your
this
thing.
is the end for me. Hell to the W.
Don't be surprised if I actually would be surprised if this game's over in the third quarter. Either way, I'd be surprised. But let me just, you know, we all know this about Thursday night games. They are incredibly unpredictable. And I think the injuries for Green Bay could be a major factor, especially along the offensive line. And let's watch Parsons to see how much he actually is ready tonight. And by the way, that Malik Willis thing I had on my notes because I was reading something from a Green Bay blogger that there's been a lot of talk that Matt LaFleur could use Malik Willis in, you know, fourth and shorts, third and shorts. Andrew in Sterling. Andrew, don't be surprised if for tonight's game. Go ahead.
I'm saying don't be surprised if the Skins get to kind of what Paulie said, get to Jordan Love and make him look just like a pedestrian quarterback. I don't think he's as good as everyone thinks he is. And like you said, week one can be a head fake. I think Jordan Love looking like an elite quarterback is going to be a head fake. And I don't think Detroit's defense is very good. I think up front, we're going to get to him tonight.
I think that's crucial, but I think it's crucial that if they get to him on passing downs, they get to him with 4. Because he is a smart quarterback. He processes quickly. I think they're well coached offensively, and they've got a lot of options. And he'll get it to those options if Washington ends up, you know, sending 5 or 6 after him to get pressure. Hopefully, we can get pressure with 4, and hopefully, you get to pressure with 4 on 3rd and long, not 3rd and 3. You know, because they're good when they are ahead of the chains. That's for sure. Yeah, I think I'm just in disagreement with you and maybe even with Paulie a little bit on Jordan Love. Let's go to Brendan. Brendan, go ahead. Don't be surprised if.
Kevin, don't be surprised if Quan Martin gets an interception tonight. I agree with you. I think Jordan Love's a phenomenal quarterback. I got him in my Dynasty Fantasy Football League. He was injured last year, just threw his whole season off a little bit. Season before, he was great. But the reason I say he's going to throw a pick tonight is that's what he does. He makes great plays. And even last week, he had really 2 interceptions in a row that neither of them counted. One of them was a drop. One of them was a penalty. Yeah. And so I think we're going to see a play similar to last week where we get pressure on him and he kind of lofts one up and Quan Martin's sitting right there. And he gets a pick. It's just like we had that one negated last week because of the Bobby Wagner penalty.
Right.
But, yeah, I think Quan's going to come up big for us tonight.
Quan Martin with an interception. Don't be surprised if. Thanks for that. 301-230-0980. If you want to weigh in, don't be surprised if something from the game tonight. Let me just say this about Jordan Love. He threw 11 picks last year. They had, the receiver situation going back to the Aaron Rodgers days, right, has always been a question mark for Green Bay, with the exception of Devontae Adams. But remember, they didn't draft a receiver in the first round for decades until this year when they drafted Matthew Golden. And, he's going to be playing his second game. The absolute key with a guy like Jordan Love, whose mobility I think is underrated, even though he does not end up with a lot of rushing yards, or he didn't last year. I think he's capable of rushing the football. We saw that in 2023, more so than in 2024. But he is one of those guys that if you are on schedule and you have a running game, and with Josh Jacobs in that offensive line, if it's healthy, they should have a running game. He's perfect for what, the LaFleur, which is, the Shanahan scheme. I love him in play action. I love him on a bootleg. I love the way he throws the football. I love his poise. That's the key, though. Get them. It was my number one key to winning the game tonight, is make them one-dimensional. If you can make them one-dimensional and you can force him to throw as a drop-back passer, not a play-action passer, not a bootleg passer, but a drop-back passer, you got a real chance for sure to have a big-time defensive output. Jason in Laurel. Jason, don't be surprised if. Go ahead.
Wow, kid, you got to me fast. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Your guy on the phones is always awesome. So I think they're winning big, and I know we're not doing predictions. I'll shelve mine. But I think midway through the third quarter, you're going to look at this game, and you're going to say, wow, the Commanders are one of the best teams in the league. I think next week we're in everybody's top 2, 3, or 4 in everybody's power rankings. I think we kill them tonight. I think the defense continues to look good. I think the offense looks better. And I think Matt LaFleur is a good coach, and I like what he's doing there. But the one thing about this team is we are playing complementary football right now, and this team is maybe as together of a unit as there is in the league right now. I saw some clip of Bobby Wagner going into his girls basketball league that he owns, and he had Jaden and some other guys with him. These guys are into each other. They do have this brotherhood thing going. I think we win big tonight, and everybody on the nation is going to say, wow, this Commanders team's for real. Thanks, Kevin. I got us going undefeated into Kansas City.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jason. I was thinking about if Washington goes into Lambeau and wins, convincingly, yes, 100% the conversation tomorrow will be Washington is a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and their odds will skyrocket. Right now it's Philly and Green Bay, 1-2, then some separation with Detroit, San Francisco, Washington, and the Rams in the NFC to win the NFC Championship. I mean, Washington's got the best odds they've had in years, and everybody sees them as a playoff team. But there is a lot of talk right now about how good the Packers are, and that the Packers are the biggest, threat to the Eagles in the NFC. And if Washington goes in there, even early in the season, is short week, and even if Green Bay's got some injuries along the offensive line, but if they go in there and win, forget even convincingly, if they go in and win the game, you're right. The conversation's going to be about, what are we watching here? This team can go win the whole thing this year. And look, part of what would make part of what would create a win tonight, and a convincing win, would be another phenomenal performance by the quarterback. And that would be a big part of what would convince people, is that they didn't win, 10-6 with great defense. They won 27-16, 27-14 with Jaden going off. Carl, go ahead. Don't be surprised if.
Yes, how you doing? Thank you for taking my call.
Sure, Carl.
But you just spoke it, believe it or not. Don't be surprised if the game ends and, lo and behold, our Washington defense ends the game without giving up a touchdown for 2 weeks in a row.
I'll be surprised. That will be a big surprise. So you have handled this segment perfectly, Carl. That is
Okay,
a don't
thank
be
you.
surprised, because I would be shocked if Green Bay doesn't score a touchdown tonight.
Right, and that would kind of take us back to one of those special years where we started the season out without giving up touchdowns and points or whatever. But that was at home. But this time it'll be just consecutive games without a touchdown to start the season out. That would be big.
91 started with 3 shutouts, I think, in the first 5 games.
Yes, 3 home shutouts. Yep.
Right. Yeah, Detroit, Philly, and Arizona, Phoenix.
Yes, Detroit,
Is that
Phoenix,
it?
Detroit, Philly, and Arizona.
Yeah. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it.
Okay, have a good one. All right.
We'll do some NFL power rankings. Where do Max and I have the Packers and Washington? Guarantee you at least one of those 2 teams is in the top 5. We'll give you our top 5 and then a team outside the top 5 to keep an eye out on. We'll do that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right, time for our first edition of the year of our NFL Power Rankings. We'll do our top 5 and then a team or two outside the top 5 that we think will bust in to the top 5 at some point this season. And it can be a team from, the back of the pack. It doesn't have to be a team right on the edge of the top 5 right now. So my top 5, I'll count them down 5-1. The 5th best team in the NFL right now, the Washington football franchise known currently as the Commanders. Washington, number 5 in my top 5 rankings. I have never debuted Washington in the top 5 of my NFL Power Rankings. Number 4, their opponent tonight, the Green Bay Packers, which is why, hence, the game tonight is the biggest early season game that Washington has played in years. I've got Green Bay at number 4. At number 3, I've got the Baltimore Ravens. Wow, what a game last Sunday night. Certainly a game they could have won. Number 2, I've got the Buffalo Bills with the incredible performance they put on, 41-40. Both of those teams are going to be really difficult to stop. And number 1, I've got the defending champion, Philadelphia Eagles. Philly did, I thought they looked good. I thought they looked clean. I thought both of those teams for the first game of the year looked clean, Dallas and Philly. It was pretty much a high-level game, with the exception, of course, of, the long delay that they had, which, by the way, affected the TV ratings. 28.3 million watched that game. That's a very good number for the opening week of the year. But there was anticipation that game was going to do 30 to 35 million. And they say what killed it was the hour and 3-minute lightning delay that particular night. All right, my top 5 again. Philly 1, Buffalo 2, Baltimore 3, Green Bay 4, Washington 5. I'll give you my teams to keep an eye on outside of the top 5 after Max gives me his top 5.
Kevin, it's really funny. You counted down 5, 4, 3, and they were all the exact same. And we don't talk about this before we do it to try and avoid this. But we kind of see it the same way. The only difference I have is I got Buffalo above Philly on 1-2. I think that offense and Josh Allen he showed why he's the MVP. And I understand that the Ravens, they have a history of blowing games like this, but at the same time, if that offense is humming and Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir and all the weapons, James Cook, if they're dialed, then I think that they can compete with anybody. And then Philly, I thought they looked good in some spots, but CB2 is kind of an issue for them. So there are some holes in the armor that I can see for Philly right now that I think a lot of teams are going to try and take a little bit more advantage of. That might knock them down a little bit in the power rankings later in the season. But right now, I got Buffalo 1, Eagles 2, Ravens 3, Packers 4, and Commanders sitting at 5.
And I think really the only team that we don't have in our top 5 that would still be in most top 5s, Kansas City.
Of course.
So there are a couple of teams. I'm going to give you a couple teams that I think had high expectations but did not have super impressive performances week 1. I would not throw in the towel on Detroit yet. I just wouldn't. In watching that game back, Green Bay's excellent defensively. And, it was a road game, and there was a lot of talk about how the offense was completely different, not as much motion. It was like a slight downtick in the amount of motion used. But apparently, Campbell said, go compare it to our road games last year. It was basically the exact same. So on the road, they did a little less motion last year with Ben Johnson. They still have excellent players on offense. They still have guys like Penei Sewell, up front. The Lions, I think, are going to be okay. We had a guest on yesterday, the guy Bart Winkler from Infinity, a Packers guy, that said he thinks Detroit's done. And we may just look back and barely remember this 2-year, run by the Lions. I think they've got too much talent. I think Gibbs and Montgomery, and then, obviously Amon-Ra and Jamison Williams and Laporta, I think they're good. And I think defensively with Hutchinson back, they're going to be much better defensively. So I am going to just say from the jump, Detroit's going to probably be back in the top 5, I think, at some point this season. You know, they've got an interesting next week. They have the Bears at home, Ben Johnson's return this week. Then they're at Baltimore on Monday Night Football. And then they've got the Browns at home. Detroit's going to be fine. Detroit's going to be back in the top 5. And the other team that I wrote down is, you know, don't be surprised if the Chargers are just better. I'm not saying that Justin Herbert will get it done in the biggest games of the year when we get to January, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Chargers end up, you know, having a run. They play the Raiders Monday night. They have the Giants. They got the Dolphins here early. Don't be surprised if the Chargers make a run at the top 5. What do you got?
So the teams I got, I got 3 of them. One of them you already mentioned. I think if Quentin Johnson has found his hands, the Chargers might be one of the more potent
he had
offenses
problems
in the
with
league.
that last year.
Yeah, and years before. But he looked great in week 1. And if he can keep it continuing, then yeah, I'm in on the Chargers this year. I think they're a team to look out for. The Rams, they looked solid versus Houston. Their pass rush and their rush defense, I thought was pretty all right. Rush defense less so than their pass rush. But if the Rams keep Matthew Stafford healthy, I think the sky's the limit for them. And then the other team that I'm just so high on and I have been banging the drum for all offseason, Tampa. I think they keep on this path. If they keep on this path and Emeka Egbuka keeps just, you know, calling touchdown plays in the huddle, I think that they're going to be just fine. I think they got a little bit of a softer division. I really like how Tampa's going to look.
I think you're going to be right about Tampa. I thought about putting them in there right now. I think you're going to be right about Tampa. I think Tampa, the key last year, I think they would have been a much more difficult out. Look, they were a difficult out to begin with. You know, we needed a walk-off doinked field goal to win that playoff game. But God, they like Detroit lost so many players defensively, and they were a really good defensive team. And I think they're a really good defensive team this year. Although, you know, Penix Jr. looked good.
He looks great.
I think he's the real deal. I really do.
Agreed.
I think Penix Jr. is the real deal. You know, this game between Washington and Green Bay at night, I mentioned, you know, the games, the last 3 games Washington has faced against the Packers at night were the 2016 game when they beat the Packers on Sunday night prior to Thanksgiving, 42-24. The previous 2 night games were both at Lambeau. The game after 9/11, and today is 9/11, so remembering all of those that fell on that incredibly tragic day 24 years ago. But Washington and Green Bay, after the week off following 9/11 in 2001, they were the first Monday night game, and the Packers rolled 37-0. That was Marty's second game as coach of Washington. Of course, Washington would go on to turn their season around and win 8 of their final 11. But before that, they played the Packers and the Redskins. They played one of the greatest regular season games in NFL history, and it was the highest scoring Monday night game in NFL history until the Chiefs and the Rams played that game 5-6 years ago, 54-51. But the game, and Theismann was on with us yesterday, this is one of those games where, you know, it's not 2 division teams, but both fan bases that are of a certain age will reference that game as a memorable game. It was truly one of the great regular season games ever, and it was for many, many years considered one of the top 2 or 3 Monday night games of all time, and it was the highest scoring Monday night game of all time. But the Packers in Washington back in October of 1983 staged an absolute epic, with Green Bay prevailing 48-47. In the game, Washington rolled up 552 yards of offense. Green Bay, 473 yards of offense. Theismann threw for 398. Lynn Dickey, the The quarterback for the Packers threw for 387. In the game, Riggo rushed for 98. Joe Washington rushed for 80 yards. They had 178 yards from their top two backs. It was an up and down game that was breathtaking to watch the entire night. And it ended with the league MVP from 1982, Mark Mosley, missing a 39-yard field goal. And Theismann on the show yesterday said that Mosley turned to him and said, "You missed the spot. You didn't put it down in the right spot." And Joe said that if this game weren't on national television, which, every game that was a national TV, every game was televised. We're not going back that far to where not every game was televised. But he basically said that that he would have tried to strangle him out on national TV or on if it hadn't been on national TV. In the game, just 2 punts. I mean, an unbelievable game won by the Packers 48-47. It would have been a 50-48 final had Mosley knocked through the field goal. I don't think we're going to get that tonight, but I think we're going to get a high-scoring game tonight. I think this could be a shootout, back and forth, both teams moving the football. When we come back, our predictions, final score prediction with a footnote to the game. We'll invite yours as well at 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Give me a final score and a footnote to tonight's game at Lambeau. By the way, all of our NFL conversation on this very show, and we just had it with our discussion of our NFL power rankings, is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus, you can't count on much, but you can count on Paramount Plus. And you can count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Stream your local NFL game live every Sunday, all season long, starting at just $30 for your first year. That's like $2.50 a month. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today.
All right, happy Thursday, everybody. The Washington Commanders, they play a football game today, but we will not start there. We will start in the NHL. Kirill Kaprizov, one of the NHL's best young talents, has turned down a contract extension with the Minnesota Wild that would have been an 8-year deal worth $128 million, making him the highest paid player in the history of the National Hockey League. That would be $16 million a year. The Wild GM, Bill Guerin, says he does not want all-out panic from the fans. Kaprizov can become a free agent at the end of the season, and the list of suitors will certainly be a long one. The Nats, they fall to the Marlins by a score of 8-3 last night. An okay night for Jake Irvin as he goes 5 innings, giving up a few runs in the 6th, and it all snowballed from there as the Nats giving up all 8 runs in the later half of the game. They will reset for one final matchup versus the Marlins for this series. Mackenzie Gore on the bump versus Ryan Weathers. First pitch at 6:40. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:10 on the Fan. And tonight, the Washington Commanders, they play a football game today. They will take on the Green Bay Packers live from Lambeau Field on Amazon Prime. The injury report for Washington, Tress Way is questionable with a back injury. Mitch Wishnowsky backing him up if he can't go. And Dietrich Wise, a limited participant in practice yesterday, is questionable as well. Kickoff set for 8:15 on Amazon Prime. Pregame starts right here on the Team 980 at 6:30 with Denton Day and Linnell Willingham. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season and halftime and postgame on the Team 980 YouTube. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Who wins tonight? Final prediction, score with a footnote, 301-230-0980. Kickoff roughly 7 hours and 28 minutes away. Not roughly, exactly 7 hours and 28 minutes away. 8:15 kickoff tonight at Lambeau. The line still 3.5 pretty much everywhere. 48.5 the total. All right, my final score prediction with my footnote is this. I got the Packers tonight, 31-27. I went 11-6 for the overall record for the team this year. So, I mean, it's a week-by-week league. It's a week-by-week thing. This was definitely one of the games I thought they could lose. I mean, you never know which games they're going to lose. I think the Packers are really good. I think they're at home. I think the injury thing and who plays and who doesn't tonight will be huge to the outcome, especially their offensive line. Tress Way, by the way, we mentioned it, I think, on yesterday's show. He is 50-50. He's questionable. They brought up Mitch Wisniewski into the practice squad, so they do have a plan. Unlike, Brian Dable last year did not have a plan for losing Graham Gano. But it sounded like, based on the way Quinn handled the question about Tress Way, that he will go tonight. I'm sure it's one of those situations where he's going to get out there very early, and if they like what they see, fine. If not, they activate Wisniewski from the practice squad or from the 53 to the active. I think that's how it works. I forget. It's early in the season. But I like Green Bay 31-27, and my footnote is we're going to be talking about officiating tomorrow. These national TV games, the replays, the reviews, Thursday night football early, and specifically Washington's going to be down there late, 4th and goal, and there's going to be a missed defensive pass interference that's so obvious. Remember the Giant game at the end of 2022? I think it was Curtis Samuel who got absolutely mauled in the end zone on 4th down. They didn't call it. Actually, that may have been 3rd down, whatever it was. That's how the game's going to end. Washington on the doorstep of winning it 34-31, but Green Bay gets away with defensive pass interference, and it's not the only thing they get away with. Officiating is going to be a big part of the conversation tomorrow, and we're going to be angry about it. 31-27 Pack. Max, what do you got?
I've got Commanders winning 24-20. I kind of like the under tonight. I think it's going to be, as some callers have mentioned, I think that a lot of both these teams are going to have a pretty, I don't want to say easy time getting in the red zone, but they will get there a good amount. It's just these two defenses are going to, it's going to be a bend, don't break kind of night for these defenses. So 24-20, Washington is my pick.
24-20. Red zone's going to be crucial. I honestly don't see one team just shutting the other one down. Detroit only scored 13 points and one of the touchdowns came late, but they did move the football a little bit. A lot of patience required tonight. One of the things I didn't mention against Green Bay, they're going to force the check down. I think I mentioned this, but Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 catches in the game because they really played everything in front of them defensively. So one of the keys is for Jaden to be patient tonight and take what that defense is giving you, throw the ball underneath to, Ertz, to Debo, to Terry, let him turn it upfield to Jalen Lane. Gibbs had 10 catches, 10 in the game, and 8 of them were checkdowns. And Montgomery had a bunch of catches. But that's the way Green Bay will play it. They're not going to let anything get behind them. They're going to let play everything in front of them, especially with somebody spying the quarterback, and they'll have eyes on the quarterback. They'll play a ton of zone. Jaden will have to be patient tonight. So you're right. I see a lot of red zone activity for both teams, and then it'll be, who executes. And by the way, saying that, I think Washington's got a better chance of executing in the red zone because of Jaden and his ability to extend plays. Jordan can do that too. All right. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Final score prediction with a footnote. Let's start with Dennis in Frederick. Dennis, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. I think it's 28-27 Green Bay, mainly because it's at home. My footnote is more penalties. They were terrible last Sunday, and I have a bad feeling this is a team that's going to do more penalties, and
what I think is going to suck. I do have one comment that you did about the Green Bay game in '83. I think you might remember this because I watched the game. I'm 73. Whoever the announcer was, because I don't remember the crew, when they were lining up for that and everybody was set, the announcer says, if they fake this, Theismann can walk into the end zone. And we wish he had faked it because
it would have been Gifford and Cosell
and
and Meredith, right?
Yes, so it was one of them, and it was spectacular when he said it. And I wish that he had really faked it, obviously. So,
yeah, but you're not going to fake a field goal down one in the last few seconds with Mark Mosley kicking it. That's funny. I don't remember that. But the Monday night crew that year would have been Gifford, Cosell, Meredith, unless it was an OJ year or Alex Karras year. I can't remember what 83 was. Thanks, Dennis, though, for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Samaj. Samaj, final score prediction with a footnote.
Hey, what's up, Cav?
Hey, Samaj.
Guys, thanks for taking my call.
Samaj, you got phone issues. Are you there?
No. Yeah, I'm here. The car picked up. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Final score with a footnote.
Got you. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
And Max stole my thunder once again. I love that guy. He's probably stealing my stuff. 24-20.
Because you know ball, Samaj.
That's okay. 24-20 Commanders. I'm taking the under. I think the defenses are going to dominate. And my footnote is, for the second week in a row, we are going to see Dan Quinn's defense look like we expect the Dan Quinn defense to look. Flying all over the field, chasing the ball, hats all over the place, aggressive. And when I saw that defense last week, that reminded me of Seattle and what Dan Quinn took to Seattle, and also what he had in Atlanta for maybe a splash. But I'm just looking for our defense to dominate. And lastly, Kev, I want my logo back. I want the Commander in Chief back at the 50, back on the helmet. Thanks for taking my call.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for the call. I think part of the Quinn defense in his mind's eye is what we saw last week. And I think what we saw last year, they played, at a high level competitively always. The execution was the issue last year. But takeaways for Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., that's what they want to see. They want to see takeaways. You start getting into the plus 25s, plus 28s in turnover margin. Plus 14, plus 15, but 25, 26, 27, 28 takeaways on the year. You're going to win double-digit games again with this offense. I mean, that offense just didn't have the benefit last year of a lot of short fields or a lot of scores or super short fields. By the way, this was something Andrew tweeted. Don't be surprised if this game comes down to the kickers. I trust theirs more than I trust ours. Brandon McManus, 23 of 24 as a Green Bay kicker. Matt Gay has yet to attempt one for our team, but there was a bit of angst coming out of the preseason with some of his kicking. It could come down to a field goal at the very end of the game. All right. Enjoy it, everybody. Kevin in Arlington wants to weigh in. Quickly, Kevin, go ahead.
Hey, Kev, thanks. It's going to be the Jalen Lane coming out party, and his punt return for a touchdown is going to give us the win, 21-17.
Love it. By the way, punt return for a touchdown, 21-17. Does that remind you of anything?
Yeah.
That was the final score.
In Chicago?
Yeah, that was the final score. Darryl Green's punt return at Soldier Field
honestly,
in the postseason.
That must be embedded in my memory bank. I didn't remember that. Thank you for sharing that. That's what I see. It's a tough ball game tonight.
Thanks. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Back tomorrow with a total recap, your reaction. Tomorrow also is a Football Friday smell test picks. We'll look at the rest of the football card on Saturday and Sunday. Have a good one. Enjoy it. Back tomorrow.